for all to see, the signs we've lost our way. When we jail our heroes and applaud our villains and turn our hearts away. Like a silent choir, too scared to sing the anthem of a braver day. The Ballad of Dr. Bruce Paix.
And there he is, episode 103, Master Paix. How are you, my friend?
You think after 102 episodes we would have got the tech right, but I've been struggling. I'm on my fourth browser to get StreamYard to work this time. So for those who don't know, Mark's going to be doing a bit of techie producing in the background because I can't do it my end for some reason.
Yes, but anyway, going back to the dark ages from when we started all those months ago, years now, Bruce, isn't it? Episode 103. So, it goes back a little while, doesn't it?
Yes.
But anyway, we'll get there. Between us, I'm pretty sure we'll work it. We're seasoned guys now. That when stuff happens, it's like we just ad lib and go for it. What do you reckon?
It's live television.
I'm usually ad libbing anyway. You're the one that prepares all the good stuff, and I just come with the silly Laurel and Hardy stuff, So that's okay. People are kind of used to that.
Well, we've got to have the bad cop.
Yeah, that's it, mate. That's it. Now, listen, what I've just done. Now I don't have a great deal. There's obviously lots to talk about, but I've got school holidays. Kids, so I've got work full time, school holidays, and so just got everything. Got to have the whole neighbourhood full of kids at my front lawn, bloody doing selling and trading and stuff, which is it's good to see. They're all outside playing, having fun and interacting, which is just awesome to see. I love it. But yeah, working from home, having school holidays, all that fun stuff. It's juggling everything, but anyway, enough of the excuses. So, but I do want to cover something, and it's a bit of self-gloating, not self-gloating, but it deserves to be shared because I did share this, and it's one of the things that is actually, as many people may know, I've got my own little platform now, my own website, Faith, Culture, Politics in Australia, and I put an article together over a little couple of weeks, and with your input, and it's one of the most read ones. I did push it around quite a bit, but just in case the audience here on Cafe Locked-Out and wherever else you might be streaming in on the X, on the two Rumbles, and YouTube, where it's going as well. If you're not aware, I am going to just quickly share this. Many of you that have been following, obviously for us for a while, you may know the story of Dr. Bruce Paix, but some of you may not know the story of Dr. Bruce Paix, the full story of his background and everything. And Bruce is very humble, and he doesn't like this sort of stuff. I know he doesn't. And this is really genuine. Just getting to know Bruce over the last few years. He hates any sort of accolades and stuff, but I'm going to do it to him anyway. But for those, this is not just to give me a plug for my platform. It's not what it's about. I put a fair bit of time in this, and Bruce gave it the okay. And for those people that don't really know, Bruce's full backstory, they might have been watching for 103 episodes, or they might be brand new or just coming across this stream. But I wanted people to be aware of this article that I put together on my Faith, Culture, Politics site, and this is about our dear Dr. Bruce Paix, and it tells his story, and it's quite comprehensive. Now, Bruce has got quite a background and a history, and he does come with a fair bit of credibility when he brings some of the stuff that he's obviously bringing, and this article details that credibility. So if you're not aware, jump on my website, Faith, Culture, Politics in Australia, fcpaustralia.com, and check out that article. It's called Dr. Bruce Paix, the cancelled military doctor who beat the system and refused to break. So it goes, it's a good 10 or 15 minute read, so there's a little bit in there, but Bruce's story does span quite a number of decades. So I recommend checking it out. And again, it's not about pushing traffic to my site or anything. This is really just to give a bit of a tribute to my mate, who I've got to know over the last few years. So, and I know you hate this stuff, Bruce, so I'm not going to go and harp on it any longer. People can check that out if they want to. They obviously see what you're presenting over 103 episodes. We've got regular, people that jump on every week just to hear what, what we've got to say, what you've got to say, the research you've done. We banter between each other. I bring the silliness because I am, and but I do. I did want to give that tribute, and I just don't think people know enough about your story. So there it is. I wanted to give that a bit of a plug, Bruce, as much as you hate it.
I might have a look at that myself.
Yeah, good on you. Good on you, Hales. Nice. No, we didn't get into that stuff. But, Hales, I did suggest to your dad about a biography. So this is a good opportunity to share all that family secret and help him edit his book, his biography for the future. All the politicians and everybody like to do it. I think Bruce deserves to put a biography together himself. I'd buy that book, Bruce. And so maybe you can get some help from a lot of people to help you put that biography together, as much as you'd hate it. But I think that, you've got a story that deserves to be heard.
It'd be a lot of work, Mark, if nothing else.
No, that's all right. What else are you going to do? You're retired. Forcefully retired. What else are you going to do?
Don't go there.
Bitcoin down. You need to get your money somehow, don't you? Like, you need to get some money back. Book sales are not bad, I hear, especially if you can get them flogged all right.
Well, buy me a coffee, mate.
Yeah, that too. Yep. No worries. Keep buying coffee. Buy coffee for Dr. Paix.
Do you ever buy a coffee button? I have no idea. Have you actually got one?
I've got one, yeah. But, and I'm happy for the royalties to go to you anyway.
Where is it? I'm looking for it on the screen. I can't even see it.
Oh, it's in the links. It's in the links of where it goes. Where we're streaming from, it's in the links. But I did, just so everybody knows, when I started talking about Dr. Bruce Paix on YouTube, on Rumble, and on X, I did share the link to that. I unashamedly shared the link to my to that article on there. So if it's the only article you read and check out, I don't care if you read the rest of my stuff. No, I do, but that's important. Check out the write up about Dr. Paix. So there you go.
And if I may say so, Mark, you got in just ahead because Heather Hying, who's the other half of Brett Weinstein's podcast, The Dark Horse, has been publishing COVID stories recently. And again, I was dobbed in to submit one. So I did talk about my experiences through the COVID period. And yeah, that's apparently coming up in the future on that site as well.
Oh, that's awesome, mate. That's awesome. And, one of the things, and we did talk about this, and I did say this, I would love nothing more than for your story to be picked up more in mainstream. I'd love for Rowan Dean to, cover you, interview you, so one of the things that I'd like to encourage people is, if you can, share that particular article around to wherever you can. I'd really love to see. We all of you guys have been watching Bruce for the 100 and so episodes. He's articulate. He's got a story to tell, and I'd love to be able to see him get picked up, even if Carl Stefanovic chose to reach out to you, Bruce. You wouldn't reject Carl, would you? You wouldn't reject Carl, would you? So, and what about if anybody knows Sam Bamford? You can reach out to Sam Bamford and say, look, Sam, you've got a big audience. We need to get Bruce's story told in the mainstream. So let's see if we can get some up. Rowan Dean, come on, mate, let's do this.
I might wait for the movie. I'm just wondering who will I get to play me? I mean, is Danny DeVito available?
Yeah, good on you, Danny DeVito. He'd have to really go his hair out when he on his chinny chin. But that might be some good. Maybe some people out, the followers our commenters can put some suggestions out about who would play Dr. Bruce Paix. Maybe you could be self-played. That wouldn't be it. But, you could be.
I did work in the industry, as you know.
Yeah, well, maybe we could reach out to Mel Gibson and he might pick it up.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, he's got some political synergy there. That's right.
Yeah, he does. Yep. I'm waiting for his follow-up to Passion of the Christ to come out. Now, obviously, if you haven't watched that, Bruce, I mean, that does tell a really harrowing story of what we've been through in Easter, and tells a really true depiction, a more accurate
Yeah.
depiction of what's been painted. So, yeah, Mel Gibson and all the work he's doing. Looking forward to the Eric Banner. J Space reckons Eric Banner. There you go.
If I can drive the XB coupe, I'd be in that.
Yeah, there we go. There we go. Yeah, Bruce likes a musket, so anybody who wants a, there isn't a buy me a musket site. There should be a buy. There should be a buy me a musket site, shouldn't there, for Bruce Paix? But
now we're getting somewhere. Now we're getting somewhere.
Now we're getting somewhere. That sounds better. And what's it? Henley's got Jesse could play you, Dad. Who's doing it?
That's
Jesse,
an in joke. Yep.
That's another in joke. There we go. There we go.
In joke. Yep. No worries.
But anyway, enough of that flogging us, and enough of that, because I know that you. Yeah, but anyway, I genuinely wanted to put that together, and I wish it, could have done a lot more. I mean, look, if it had done a lot more, it would have ended up being a book. But I think it gives a bit of quite a bit of an overview of Bruce. So check it out. See what you think. If you think it's worth sharing, flog it along, and let's get Bruce some bigger interviews.
Well, let's crack in, shall we?
Let's do this. You can obviously share your. You can. Yep. All right. You got that going. Is that you or me? You're sharing my screen. Well, you can share. Look at you go.
I don't know. That's not the one I was trying to.
No, but I can play. I can play it. There you go.
That's I might leave that to your end. As I said, there was some interesting technical gremlins being on for a few weeks, so let's not push that too far. I'll let you do all the button pushing your end, I think.
Yeah, no worries at all. And maybe you could set up an anonymous PO box, Bruce, for that buy me a musket idea. Maybe people would be okay. You'd end up with a whole crate full of. You need a bigger shed, brother.
Just get a roadside drop, perhaps.
That's it, mate. That's it.
All right, where are we? So there's the contents list for today, the 13th of April. Not a Friday, but it might as well be, I suppose. So updates, another big Gulf War update, and it just gets worse. So I'm going to step through the events of the last week, and nothing has improved in the last week. Nothing makes me more confident about the economic and financial fallout from this being good. I think it's going to be every week. I think it's going to be worse. So I'll look into that. Got a wee bit of the old not easy being greens, with about a year since the state black of Spain and Portugal. You might remember the entire countries went black. And the early report has just been released that said, surprise, surprise, the instability in their grid was related to the excess amount of renewables they were using, despite the immediate and reflexive denials at the time. The first report says, yep, the grid operators were warning the government that this thing's unstable and she's going to blow. And sure enough, it did.
Yep.
We've got more evidence that warmer temperatures are good for people. And let's face it, when we talk about the Earth warming, the whole Earth doesn't have the same temperature. Parts of it are arguably too hot, parts of it are arguably too cold. And who says exactly where we were 50 years ago was ideal? If the Earth genuinely is warming, the colder parts would probably like it, and maybe the warmer parts wouldn't. And we've mentioned in the past, far more humans die of cold than heat. And another study supports that.
Yep.
And we've got the related issue of battery fires, and surprise, surprise, more battery fires reported this week, including one from South Australia, which was really a bit of a twofer, because apparently a electric scooter that was in the back of a car caught fire in South Australia. So the scooter actually killed the car as well, which is all a bit sad, isn't it?
Oh dear. What a shame. What a shame. So there's a story. Don't carry electric scooters in the boot of your car.
Yeah, well, you might carry it. I think it's sort of like a lifeboat, if your car breaks down, you just roll that out. But no, that might not be the idea. We got a couple more recidivist stories from health with more evidence that the old horse paste is good for you, with promising cancer results, very promising actually. And on the flip side of that, a very large study in Korea showed that the rate of new onset dementia is 20 to 30% higher in the 3 months after you get a COVID shot. And I'm just going to wonder does that explain what's happened to the Donald? Because he's not the same Donald that we used to have. That's clear. So I wonder whether his recent COVID boosters might have actually tipped him over the edge there. Same as they appear to do with Biden. He arguably wasn't very good when he was elected, but he certainly went downhill, didn't he?
Mm-hmm.
Finance, and got a story in finance which is a little bit of a follow-on from the current fuel crisis. And Albo's been to Singapore to get guarantees that the Singaporeans will send us fuel, and he's very pleased about that. And I'm going to ask, okay, what's that guarantee worth? Where does Singapore get their raw materials from? Because, pro tip, Singapore doesn't drill for oil. So what is a Singaporean delivery guarantee worth if Singapore can't guarantee they'll get their input stock in the first place? To flip over that, I'm just going to briefly go over again a story I did maybe a year ago when we talked about abiotic oil, which seems to be more relevant at the moment. So, quick overview. The Western world believes that oil is a biological product made of geological forces acting on ancient biological material. Trees, plants, fossils get buried, dirt blocks them in, they get buried underground, and geological forces magically turn them into coal, oil, and gas over time. Well, I've just read another book that says, no, that's not true, and I'm going to go through the evidence that oil is in fact not a biological product. It's a natural renewable resource, believe it or not, and what that might mean if that's true. We've got a diversity is strength story that actually hits pretty close home to me, because I saw a picture of the ACT, Australian Capital Territory's first Indigenous Supreme Court judge, and I thought, that's a familiar face. And it turns out that my judge, when I went through my criminal trial in Canberra, it's the same person. So I'm going to wonder, is it possible, I was surprised to get a decent run through the courts in Canberra, not trusting the system. And maybe that was just a little bit of a helping hand from one Indigenous person to another. Who knows?
Who knows? Yeah. Well, maybe this one isn't a DEI hire. Maybe she actually deserved the position that she got.
And finally, interesting story. So a footballer from the VFL, that's the second tier competition here in Victoria, is under very serious charges because he apparently uttered a homophobic slur during a match. And this was so bad, apparently, that he's being threatened with a 10-week suspension. Now, that seems to be a very severe penalty for a word crime, especially given the fact that I'll bring out another example where a player who did a dangerous tackle that actually broke the jaw of the other player only got 1 week. So I've done a bit of digging into that, and it turns out that homophobia is actually a psychiatric disorder, because a phobia is an unreasonable anxiety disorder. So it would seem to me that what the VFL Tribunal's doing here is they're actually penalising a person for a health condition. And that's illegal according to the Discrimination Commissioner. So I'm going to have a wee look at that as well. Because
interesting.
That's a bit of a conundrum, isn't it? We're all accused of being phobic, this or that. Did you realise that we were being discriminated against when we were accused of that?
That's very interesting. That's very interesting. Absolutely. Right. I just thought I'd share this because we've talked about this before. You've got a bit of a bugbear with the interpreters in the bottom of the screens on Auslan and all that. But Susie just wanted to let you know that it's National Auslan Day today, celebrating the language of the deaf. Now, you talk about the distraction side of things when you listen, people listen to reports and stuff like that. Obviously it costs a bit of money for these people, and you're not saying that they shouldn't exist or shouldn't happen, but we've got national Indigenous television stations and all that. I mean, we could have a station that's predominantly there for people that are deaf, and then could be funded by us, I guess, the taxpayer, that kind of just has all the news reports that are happening in the day, and they could have the Auslan interpreter there on their specific channel rather than the mainstream. I don't know. It's just chucking it out there, because you're not saying that they don't deserve it, Bruce. Is saying what you're saying. It's very distracting when you're trying to listen to, emergency news or whatever.
Well, I think it's a question of proportionality. There are very few people in Australia who are absolutely dependent on Auslan. I think it's less than 10,000. Now, to cater for those people, we have a third to a half of the screen taken up at apparently important emergency broadcasts with someone who is incredibly distracting. And the other 30 million, pick a figure, people in Australia get less information out of that broadcast because we are catering to 10,000. So, if people want equality, they get equality. But if you want a third of the screen when there's only 10,000 be benefiting, then that's not equality. That's favouring you.
Yep, exactly. Proportionality is I think the key word there that you were mentioning. So yeah.
Yep.
And they have the deaf news on ABC on a weekly basis. So, yeah, and I don't even mind if they have deaf news on a daily basis. If you want to, as I said, we don't. I don't begrudge people having access to things, but yeah, I understand the point. I understand the point you're making, Bruce.
And hat tip to Danny, who I used to work with on the rescue chopper, who, as you know, has got 2 bionic ears.
Danny, if you're watching, brother, hey, brother.
Yeah, love you, Danny. But he taught me a very useful way you could deflect some of the COVID Karens if you went into Bunnings or a shop during the COVID calamity. You'd very quickly get somebody with a vest coming over to you and rousing at you because you're not wearing a mask, or you're walking the wrong way up and down the aisle, or you're too close or whatever. And Danny showed me that you just ignore them until they get right up in your face. You just pretend you can't hear them. When they get right up in your face, you just look at them and go, "Oh, Dad, Dad." And they guarantee you they will back off and leave you. Oh, sorry. So,
yeah,
thanks,
away.
Danny. Good tip. Good tip.
Yeah, they've bloody COVID, bloody Nazis, those marshals, people that took on those roles. I mean, swear to goodness, they definitely would have loved the end of 1930s, 40s Germany, I'm pretty sure. But anyway, or any other regime you want to mention,
It really showed me how the school teacher from some rural school in, some part of Germany, or the postmaster, ended up being, the slaughterer of the Jews in Poland when he was given his uniform. Was no different to the COVID wardens getting their vest and their mission to go out and harass. You could see how it happened. You could just see how it happened.
Absolutely. And Jace is always coming up with the clangers. He says this is referencing ABC. They have dumb news on the rest of the time. Yes. Yes, dumb news. Dumb news at $1.2 billion of our taxes. Thanks for coming. Anyway.
And before we let COVID go, I do remember saying at the time of COVID, COVID's just a trial run. They're just using it to test out the control apparatus, and the real lockdowns are going to be for climate. We're already starting to hear it. Fuel rationing. Isn't that beautiful for the green people?
Oh, yeah.
That's going to happen next.
Inner city elites that want to ride their e-scooters to the, coffee shop to have the latte. Yep. They're not affected. Don't worry about the rest of the country. The people that are farmers and relying on, diesel for tractors and trucks and everything that gets the latte to their coffee shops. You know what I mean? Like, let's forget about them. It's almost like that control, that whole inner city stuff. What was it? I was covering the other day, and there was a term for it back in the day where the Liberal Party. There was something about how it was favouring country folk as opposed to city folk, and they had a term for it, and I can't remember what it was, but it seems to have just flipped the script where they changed the voting the way that the voting was done. But yeah, anyway, I just lost it there for a minute. So, but anyway, I might try and dig it up one day. But someone else might be able to remind me of that. It was called something. Gerrymander? Is it gerrymandering? I don't know.
Gerrymandering is where you adjust the electoral boundaries to get sufficient votes for one party, and often you get quite bizarre lines drawn. Okay, why did that electorate go like that? It's because that bit went out around a migrant hostel or something, just to bring in some left-wing votes to turn that into, and the Americans are masters of this as well.
Yeah. So that kind of just seems to ring a bell of where we are now. But just in reverse.
Unfortunately, the key to curing government is not having the right government; it's having the smallest government. You just got to assume that whatever they do will be bad and give them the minimal power possible. Don't try and get the right people in there. You can't. You occasionally get it right, and most of the time they either change or lie or get captured or whatever. I'm afraid.
So maybe our favourite commenter noticed that you were going to bring up some Hulsha. So we've seen Dan. He's come in and he's chucked a comment in the Rumble, not in the comment section, but he's saying, Bruce, you've been predicting the next lockdown annually for the last 4 years. We're still waiting. Good on you, Dan. Okay, Dan. Well, good on you for joining us, mate. I don't know whether you've just been silent or whether you finished your shift earlier. We were only talking the other week that we kind of, that we haven't seen you spraying your comments in for a while.
Yeah, and I was genuinely sad. So it's really good to see that he's still alive and about. And in fact, there is a wee bit of the old material that might interest him in the show tonight. So fantastic timing. Thanks very much.
Yeah, good on you, Dan. And I noticed that he's not commenting in the comments because he kind of gets a bit of pushback from our regular viewers. But maybe so he's just commented on the normal comments in the Rumble. But anyway, good to see you back here, Dan. I'm glad that you're actually joining us. I'm really, really pleased that you're watching and you're interested in Dr. Bruce Paix. So anyway, maybe you can jump on the Faith, Culture, Politics site and check out his article, the article that I've written about him, and you might appreciate it. Maybe you could share it around as well, Dan. I don't know.
I'd have a look myself.
Anyway, let's do this.
So give me my screen back. Like I say, I dare not touch any buttons here. All right. So update on the war, the current Gulf War. So as we went out a week ago, last Monday, we were all hanging a bit in the air because the Donald, had issued a sternly worded warning to Iran, basically saying the next day, last Tuesday, they had to open the effing strait or there was going to be serious problems, was what he basically said. And he said if it wasn't, then he was going to start destroying all of the civilian infrastructure in Iran. He was going to ping all the power stations, the water treatment plants, etc. And the Iranians just said, well, whatever you do, we'll respond in kind. And they certainly have been. They have not broken any promises, the Iranians. If they've said they'll do something, they've done it. As opposed to the Donald, who doesn't matter what he says one day, he'll say something different the next day. And it is so sad. I had great hopes for the Donald. I thought he was a man who was going to step out of the mainstream. He wasn't a career politician, and he was going to say and do things that made a difference. Well, he says and does something different every day, doesn't he? Which is a real shame. Anyhow,
yeah, he's all over the place.
This time last week, Iran had basically overnight to get the strait open, or there was going to be huge problems. That was the position we're in a week ago. And Trump did what's called a taco. So the next morning came and he changed his story. So by the next morning, instead of being, we're going to start bombing right now, by the next morning, the Tuesday morning, their time, the story had shifted to, okay, we're having a 14-day ceasefire. Now, the ceasefire apparently was contingent on a couple of things. So the Iranians had to immediately open the strait, which isn't likely to happen because, as we discussed, that's their Schwerpunkt, that's their major weapon. But I do remember thinking at the time, you know what? Even if they get a ceasefire, even if the Americans agree to not bomb Iran, and even if the Iranians did say, okay, we'll let ships pass, my concern was that Israel historically always breaks these deals immediately. And no different this time. Israel immediately broke it. Within a day, Israel put in their biggest attack on Lebanon of the entire current conflict. Such a big attack that apparently they killed 250 people and injured more than 1,100. And that was within a day. So, yep, even if the Iranians had stopped and even if the Americans had stopped, it didn't matter because the Israelis didn't. And the Israelis are part of that. So the Israelis basically torpedoed that deal within 24 hours, even though it was like a 14-day alleged ceasefire. And I just want to take a little detour here to re-go over something we went over last week. And that is, look at what we call the injured to killed ratio here. So in this story, those attacks on Lebanon killed 1,165 people and injured 254. Sorry, other way around. Injured 1,160 and killed 250. Now, obviously, some of the injured will die, so the killed numbers will go up a bit. But basically, that's a 4.6 to 1. And if you remember, we talked about that. That is perfectly concordant with the numbers you expect in the sort of war we're getting. So Lebanon is being bombed from the air. Most of this damage was airstrikes and bombs. And that matched with quite a few wars that I mentioned, so Vietnam, Iraq and Afghanistan. The injured to killed ratios were similar. And they should be the same for the American casualties because, again, in this war, most of the American casualties have been through missiles and drone strikes on their bases. So effectively bombing. And as we discussed last week, the US injured to killed ratio was 28 to 1. It's never been that high in the history of warfare. It's discordant, and a similar sort of major attack in Lebanon this week is matched what you'd expect, 4.6 to 1, about 5 to 1, which is very, very different from what the Americans are claiming based on a similar injury mechanism in a similar war, similar part of the world. So again, I'll just say that I think the Americans are lying about their death numbers. I think they're hiding a lot of deaths because there is no reason why they're getting so few killed versus injured in basically the same sorts of attacks. So watch for that. When the dust finally settles, we might find that they were telling porky pies about their numbers here. Okay, so in response to that, so we had a open the effing straight or else everything's, I'm going to bomb everything back to the Stone Age, followed by the next morning, okay, you got 2 weeks, provided 2 weeks ceasefire. And then we had the Israelis break it immediately. And in response to the Israelis breaking it immediately, the Iranians said, okay, the strait's closed. So the whole premise of the ceasefire was the ceasefire, what the Iranians were going to do was open the strait. What the Americans were going to do was stop bombing. Well, the Israelis were included under the American banner. They kept bombing, so Iran immediately closed the strait again. So the ceasefire didn't even last a day. No surprise, because historically this is what Israel does. It always breaks ceasefires. Now, Bibi came out almost immediately and said, well, the ceasefire never applied to Lebanon anyway. It didn't apply to us. So that was Bibi's excuse for it. And almost immediately, US Vice President Vance, who's been acting as the principal negotiator, he backed that up. He said, yep, that's correct. There was a mistake or there was a misunderstanding and the ceasefire never applied to Lebanon. So the Iranians are being unreasonable because, Lebanon was never part of the ceasefire. But there's plenty of evidence that it was because Trump had already tweeted out that the Iranian 10-point proposal, which included a ceasefire in Lebanon, was a workable basis for the ceasefire. So Trump had already said that, yeah, it does apply to all theatres. And in fact, initial statement for the ceasefire, which came from the Pakistani Prime Minister, because the peace talks were held in Pakistan, the negotiations were happening in Islamabad, and his announcement of the ceasefire said that Iran and the United States of America, along with their allies, have agreed to an immediate ceasefire everywhere, including Lebanon.
Mm-hmm.
So it is not true that Lebanon was not included. The negotiators specifically included, and the Israelis, as usual, typically broke it. And my read on that is that Israel's controlling this war, not the Americans. I think the Israelis knew that the agreement was that they would stop bombing Lebanon. They just did it anyway, because the end of the war does not suit the Israelis. So now, regardless of that, regardless of the so-called talks, once the Israelis broke the ceasefire by bombing Lebanon, the Iranians responded by attacking the Trans-Saudi pipeline, which we discussed a week ago. And that's this pipeline, very important safety valve to the Persian Gulf, because it allows the Saudis to export oil not through the closed Strait of Hormuz, but instead to ship it across to the Red Sea, get it out through there. So the Iranians attacked that as soon as the ceasefire was broken. And this is very important, because that was one of the main ways that the Strait of Hormuz could be bypassed. In fact, it's the principal way that the Strait of Hormuz could be bypassed. So the Iranians attacked the pipeline, which shut it down for a period of time. Allegedly, it's been repaired already. But the Iranians showed that they can totally shut down oil exports from Saudi Arabia, even though they've got this bypass, because it's very easy to target a pipeline. Now, the Saudis said that they restarted the pipeline, which is good if true, but if it's not true, it's a huge problem, because storage of oil once it's produced from a field is very difficult. The whole Persian Gulf is set up to get the oil out of the ground, get it into a storage tank, get it into a tanker and get it moved on, so as more oil can go in the tank and go into the next ship. That's really important. And if you can't ship your oil out after your tanks fill up, you have to shut the oil field down. And that is a technical process that is nowhere as easy as it sounds. And from my reading, restarting a field after it's shut down can take weeks or months and can damage it permanently. So if the Iranians permanently close off that pipeline, they could do permanent damage to the Saudi oil fields going forward into the future. And they probably have done for Kuwait and other fields that have already had to shut down. So it is no small thing.
Yep.
This is all in the last week, Mark.
Yeah, crazy stuff.
Now, despite these glitches, despite the ceasefire being broken almost immediately, the peace talks still went ahead in Islamabad, in Pakistan, over the weekend. And I'm a bit surprised that the Iranians even turned up, because the preconditions for turning up for talks had not been met. There was no ceasefire at the time. So the fact that they even turned up was a surprise. Now, during the talks, Trump was televised saying to the media that his main goal for the peace talks, 99% of the goal, with his direct words, was to ensure that Iran did not have or get a nuclear weapon. He said that was 99% of the goal there. So that, by the way, is something they had before they went to war. The Iranians have never had a nuclear weapon. So that goal could have been met simply by not doing what they did, which was by going to war. Now, despite this, the Israelis in particular have been claiming for 30 or 40 years that Iran is just about to get the bomb. And Mark, are you still there, my friend? I've lost your camera.
No, still here, brother. Just had to sort something.
Time for you to play BB. You're just putting your makeup on, are you?
Yeah, something like that, brother. Anyway, it's coming. Here we go. Time for BB.
Is 40 years of they're about to get the bomb.
Line before.
Iran has never given up its quest for nuclear weapons and the missiles to deliver them.
That's because Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has been saying this for more than 30 years, claiming Iran is close to having
Nuclear weapons. Nuclear weapons. Nuclear weapons. Atomic bombs.
In 1992, as a member of parliament, Netanyahu addresses the Knesset. He says, within 3 to 5 years, we can assume that Iran will become autonomous in its ability to develop and produce a nuclear bomb. 3 years later, in his book Fighting Terrorism, he repeats the same time frame, 3 to 5 years.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Fast forward to 2002. Netanyahu testifies before a U.S. congressional committee actively calling for the invasion of Iraq.
Are there any other nations that you would recommend that the United States launch preemptive attacks upon at this point?
The two nations that are vying, competing with each other, who will be the first to achieve nuclear weapons, is Iraq and Iran.
The invasion happens months later.
How would you like us to
weapons of mass
invade?
destruction are found in Iraq.
Yeah, exactly.
This is a fragment of a 2009 U.S. State Department cable released by WikiLeaks. Netanyahu tells members of Congress that Iran is 1 or 2 years away from being capable of developing nuclear weapons.
They're online.
It's 2012, and Netanyahu is holding up his infamous cartoon bomb at the UN General Assembly.
By next spring, at most, by next summer, at current enrichment rates, they will have finished the medium enrichment and move on to the final stage. From there, it's only a few months, possibly a few weeks, before they get enough enriched uranium for the first bomb.
And now, 33 years after Netanyahu's first so-called imminent warning, Israel attacks Iran.
If not stopped, Iran could produce a nuclear weapon in a very short time. It could be a year, it could be within a few months, less than a year.
That's despite the U.S. Director of National Intelligence saying Iran isn't building a nuclear weapon months earlier.
Iran lied.
But for Netanyahu,
Big time.
the slogan has been the same for decades. Dmitry Medvedenko, Al Jazeera.
Make sure to subscribe to our.
There you go.
So Israel has been claiming that Iran's been on the verge of a nuclear weapon for 33 years plus. And in fact, in order to go to war, you need what's called an imminent threat. So the Americans justified this on the basis that Iran was, again, just about to get a nuclear bomb. That's why they had to start this war 6 weeks ago. Now, remember, it's only 6 months since they destroyed their nuclear program, and in fact set it back by years when they bombed Fordo, which we discussed in question previously. So in that 6 months, they've got all the way back to almost getting a bomb again, same as they've been for 30-something years. They've never had a bomb, despite all the Israeli claims. And in fact, their supreme leader, the one that they killed on day one of the war, had issued a religious fatwa, so a religious decree that said you can't have nuclear weapons. They're haram. They're religiously not allowed because of what they are and how they work. So that's why the Americans had to suddenly go back and attack Iran 6 weeks ago and cause us and the rest of the world so much economic and financial pain, because yet again, they're about to get a nuclear weapon, apparently.
Yep. Yep.
So,
And again, I mean, we've got to reiterate here, Bruce, and we've talked about it before. This is not a condoning the regimes, the Islamic regimes that have been ruling these countries and oppressing their people as well. There's a lot at play here, right? So we're not, you know, I mean, I know that you're not sympathetic towards these type of governments that are oppressing their people, but there's a lot more play here, isn't there?
I'm not supporting Iran here, but I think their record of not attacking their neighbours as often as Israel and the US has done, is pretty good. I don't think the US or Israel had a casus belli here. Casus belli is a cause for war. And they went ahead anyway. They made a huge blunder. They've bitten off more than they can chew. And the worldwide consequences I expect to be very severe. Very severe.
Yep. Yep.
All
Because as I
right,
said,
give me my slides back.
We've brought it up plenty of times where you know, you've brought the Quran out, you've read it, you've talked about the kind of fundamentalists, the people that are actually, you know, doing all this stuff all around the world. So there's definitely shouldn't be any questions about that.
Yep.
You've been quite balanced on all these topics.
Just so as you know.
Mm-hmm.
How come there's no label on the front of this book that you sent me, mate?
Did you want me to put to Dear Bruce on it?
Oh, shouldn't it say the Bible or something?
So on the
Oh,
side?
it's on there. It's on the edge.
It's on the edge, brother.
fact,
Anyway,
all
you still
year
got a
to
long
that.
way to go. You still got a long way to go, brother. You've got a long way to go. A lot of discernment still to do there, mate.
Still in Genesis. Yeah.
Mm.
Anyway, where was I? So during the peace talks which just failed, Trump said that 99% of what the US was trying to achieve here was that Iran would be prevented from getting a nuclear weapon. Now, I might add that the US and Israel have both got lots of nuclear weapons. Nobody seems to think that that's discordant. And, you know, if the Americans and the Israelis want to say, oh, well, we would never attack our neighbours. Hello? Hello?
Yeah. What's America done for the last bloody number of decades is like regime change and the CIA going in there. And, you know, that's almost common knowledge now. Like even like normies now, the mainstream media even reports about regime change and bloody all this stuff, right? So it's like, really? Come on.
So 99% of the war aim here was to prevent the Iranians getting a bomb, which they already had a leader that said was haram, was forbidden. And I guess the only 1% left was that Trump also wanted the Strait reopened. So the 1% left was Strait of Hormuz has got to be, if I can quote him from last week, effing opened. That was a week ago, right? Okay. Now, I might point out that both of those conditions existed before Israel and the US started bombing Iran. So their current war aims are to get back to where they were before they started the war. That's pretty poor return, I would have said. Anyway, so where were we? So we're stepping through the week and so much happened during the week. So on Sunday, yesterday, whilst the talks were coming to a failed close, it was reported that 2 US warships did transit the Strait of Hormuz, and the implication was, see, the US Navy's just reopened the strait. That's what we were told. Now, two things. One is to do so under a truce, under a ceasefire, is a bit disingenuous anyway. But where the US is being extremely disingenuous is how they framed it. So CENTCOM, that's the military command that controls US forces in that part of the world, issued this statement a couple of days ago now. It said that US forces, the US Navy, has started mine clearance in the Strait of Hormuz. And they listed the 2 ships that were involved, so a couple of guided missile destroyers. This was extremely deceptive for them to say that. So not only was the passage not contested because it was under a flag of truce, but it wasn't a mine clearance mission. And it can't be a mine clearance mission because those 2 ships have virtually no mine clearing ability. They're guided missile destroyers. Minesweeping is a very specialised mission, requires very specialised ships, and it requires long-term physical presence. And to back that up, this is what the AIs said, and I wouldn't trust the AIs too much, but there's really no doubt on this. Those 2 destroyers are what's called Arleigh Burke destroyers. And so I asked the Googles, can these vessels sweep mines? And the answer was no. The Arleigh Burke destroyer is not designed for mine sweeping. Its primary roles are air defence, etc., etc., etc. So These commencement of mine-sweeping operations with these two destroyers is completely disingenuous. It's fraudulent. Those ships are not capable of clearing mines, apart from the old do it once, then throw the ship away method. And so this was just a complete con. This was not the start of mine-sweeping operations. And why this is important is because that's one of the prime ways that the Iranians are going to keep the strait closed, by mining it. Now, it turned out the Iranians said that they issued a warning to these ships, during the peace talks, that they better turn around or they get attacked, and apparently they did. So I think it was all a publicity stunt by the Americans, which achieved nothing, and their marketing of it is extremely dishonest.
Yeah, yep. It just seems to be like more of a propaganda campaign again, doesn't it? It's like to keep the masses distracted, and it's what it's really all about, isn't it?
Look, it's always a propaganda campaign, and you and I learnt during COVID, if we didn't already know it, that our own government lies to us all the time. It's no different during war. The US is lying to its people about the war. The Iranian government's probably lying to its people about the war. I'm just presenting what I hoover up from open source intelligence and how I interpret it. I'm not just reading to you what the government news report is, the press release is. I'm telling you, these are all the things that reported, and these are how I interpret them. Anyhow, it's pretty soon after this mine-sweeping operation in the Strait of Hormuz, the talks broke down. Like I said, I'm surprised they even started, given that there was no ceasefire, given that the Israelis broke it even before the talks started, and it was a precondition. So after one day of negotiations, the talks broke down, and the American negotiators went home. They left, and I believe the Iranians have left as well. So 14-day ceasefire and peace talks basically broke down immediately. And so following that, the US position changed again. And I think I got in trouble once before saying, rather schizophrenically, the Trump's response to open the effing strait or else, and the Iranians saying, make us, his response was, well, we'll close it ourselves. So the Americans' counter to that is, okay, well, if you won't open the strait, we're going to blockade the strait ourselves. Well, not sure how that opens it.
Maybe that was the whole point all along, Bruce. Some people might be saying that might be the point all along, to create what we currently got going on in the world. But who knows? There's so many moving pieces.
I don't believe Trump's playing 4D chess. I don't think he's capable of it. And even if he is, I reference Brett Weinstein's comments about complex systems. You might think you've got a cunning plan here, Blackadder, but you know what? There's so many pieces and levers and things on the board that you don't control what you think you control. It can all go belly up, however clever you think you are.
Yeah.
100%. So Americans said, all right, we're going to blockade the strait ourselves. I don't know why they didn't do it from the start, because apparently the Iranians have been shipping oil out the whole time. Well, I do know why. The reason I do is because the main weapon that the Iranians can wield against the West is, we will cause you economic pain by pushing oil prices up. That's their main weapon. So the US was actually allowing Iranian oil to be sold on the world market to keep the oil prices from going up too much at the same time as they're at war with Iran. It's just, where's John Larder and the you can't make this stuff up flag, really?
Yeah, I know, right? We need to get a spoon.
And by the way, the other bad guy regime in the world at the moment is the evil Russians, who've been under sanctions for several years over the Ukraine war. And the Americans have also lifted the sanctions on the Russians selling their oil. So
interesting.
We had the situation where the two major evil regimes, Russia and Iran, according to the US, not only had increased demand for their product, but they were selling it at a higher price.
Yeah,
and thus hurting the US and hurting the rest of the world. I mean, literally, you can't make this stuff up.
Well, it looks like the propaganda worked in Hungary with Orban, because they reckon that Orban was too close to be in bed with Trump, and so they said that he got ousted. But a lot of things happen in elections, don't we? They can be manipulated. But I like this comment from BW. I like you've said this before, Bruce, the hypothesis that Trump is affected by the C jabs, one to share with parents who hate Trump but took the jab, get 2 points made in one sentence.
And I'll bring you the receipts on that when we get into the health section.
Well, there you go. Yep.
But before we do, let's finish off on this week in the Gulf. So the US Navy's announced that they're going to blockade the Strait as well. But I make the point that this does not mean that the US Navy now controls the Strait of Hormuz. Them blockading it, apart from doing a quick thunder run under the cover of peace talks, does not mean that the US Navy is going to be operating warships in the Strait, because if they do, the Iranians are going to start sinking them. So they're going to be doing what's called a distant blockade. They're going to be hundreds, if not 1,000 kilometres away in the circled area, which, by the way, is where their carriers are operating. Their carriers can't operate close to Iran because the Iranian missile threat is too large. So they're going to be doing a distant blockade, which means they're going to be monitoring ships that leave the Gulf and intercepting them on the high seas, also known as piracy.
Yes.
Also known as piracy. So it's not a blockade that the US has said they're going to do, it's piracy. And very sadly, for those who know your history, the US Marines were birthed to deal with the Barbary pirates, I think back in the 1800s. They were an anti-piracy force, basically, the US Marine Force. And here we are, we've flipped it, and they'll probably be crewing the helicopters which are actually doing the raids on ships. They've probably come 180 degrees on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And what all this means for us and the rest of the world is a lot more financial pressure on both the supply and price of oil. And I do my my financial numbers, so the Bitcoin price, the gold price, and the oil price. I do them on Sundays when all the markets are closed. So I had to do an update today because the Sunday price for Brent crude, which is effectively the European oil price, was $95. And when the markets opened, that bounced up 8% to nearly 103. And I expect it to go much higher. I still regard that as a very low number that's not factoring in the very serious threats to oil supplies from the Persian Gulf.
Very interesting.
So here's my end of week 6 scorecard. So in week 6 of the 4-day war, where are we at? So we had a 14-day ceasefire announced at the start of the week, but it really never got going at all. The Israelis broke it immediately. As a result, the peace talks in Islamabad also broke down within a day or so of starting. And as a result of that, the US stormed out of the room, threw their toys out of the cot and said, okay, well, if you won't open the strait, we're closing it. So the US said, we're shutting the strait down. And Iran said, yeah, well, okay, well, we're going to shut it down to ships that we don't allow out. So we've got a double closure of the strait. And last week I said, as long as the strait's closed, Iran is winning. Well, now we got both belligerents closing the strait, so Iran is still winning.
Well, one way to look at it, Bruce, though, is that now that the strait's closed, the internationalists, the globalists are winning because, they do want to impart their Great Reset, Bruce. So it could be part of a much bigger thing. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there.
Yeah, well, putting costs up massively is a big part of the you will own nothing thing, isn't it? You lose your house because you can't afford it. Your car loan will go default and probably lose your job. Yeah, perfect.
Yep,
As we
stripping
said
the
before.
low and middle class again, right? So who does it normally affect? All these things that happen, like COVID, who did it affect most, right? Like people, I mean, you've worked really hard. Like I said, you're educated, you worked hard all your life, you've set yourself up, right? And there's a lot of people that are in that position that sucked off the government teat, off the taxpayer teat, to put themselves in the same position. A lot of other people. And the people that benefited the most, the multinationals, the conglomerates, the massive conglomerates over COVID. We look at all the things that were closed down. What was closed and what was open. You only had to look at that, right? So it was a massive wealth transfer. So this is the same thing again. Who are the people that suffer the most with what's currently going on in the world? It's the low and middle class, right? And it's about destroying the middle class.
Bob's Hardware was closed, Bunnings was open.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly right.
Coles, Woolies, all that, and all the things that are kind of undermine the family, the natural family, and things. Brothels were open. Like we couldn't.
Churches were closed.
Churches were closed. Brothels were open. Now I worked that one out. I couldn't really understand that. Right? You went to a coffee shop, and you had to, when you were sitting down eating, you could take your mask off, but when you were standing up at a certain height, you have to mask on. So it was so virulent that it was, you just couldn't stand up. Yet you were able to be intimate with someone at very close. The brothels were just like fully open. Now I'm telling you, me as a Christian, right? This is pure evil. What has been instilled and instigated with all these actions is pure evil. But anyway, enough of that. This is not my faith, culture, politics. This is Wake Up Australia. So I'm not going to get on a rant there for you.
It's not meant to make sense. It's meant to change all the time, so you don't know what's real anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
Reference the US political positions as stated by Trump. They change every day. None of it makes sense. Same with COVID. Standing up, sitting down, none of it makes sense. It's not meant to. It's not meant to.
No. Are you finished with that section? Was that a wrap up on that?
Almost. So let's have the.
Because I do want to play one thing for you just to get your take on it.
Okay, give me one more. So
no, that's all right. Based on this,
that was my end of week 6, and I'll throw that word Schwerpunkt at you again, which is a classic concept from Clausewitz. Clausewitz being one of the great military writers, and. Sun Tzu, The Art of War, was another one, and somebody here's memeing Don Tzu here, saying that, yes, the key here is you can break an enemy blockade by blockading their blockade. It's not meant to make sense, Mark.
No, of course not. Schwerpunkt.
Schwerpunkt, the key point, the center of gravity, the thing which you have to focus on to win or lose. And as I've said, the Schwerpunkt here is the straight open or closed. If it's closed, Iran's winning. If it's open, Iran's losing.
Yep.
Over to you, sir.
Just kind of, I had something shared with me that a video. Someone sent it through to me, and I thought I'd get your critique on it, because we've just covered this whole section about Iran and that, but and especially in regards to Trump. So I'm just going to play this for you. It's about 3 minutes, so I'm just going to see what you think about it.
Okay, so what if Trump is not an idiot? What if losing the war in Iran is exactly the plan? Let me show you something the media will never tell you. So everyone is saying Trump is destroying America. He is fighting an unwinnable war in Iran. He is threatening to invade with ground troops. He is pissing off NATO by threatening Greenland. He is picking fights with Canada, Mexico, Denmark, Colombia. JP Morgan says the world will run out of oil by mid-April. The global economy is about to collapse. Trump looks like the worst president in history, a complete buffoon, right? But what if that's the whole point? What if Trump wants to lose the war in Iran? What if he wants the American empire to collapse? What if he wants to destroy the global economy? Then he would be a genius. Let me explain. Right now, the world gets 20% of its oil from the Middle East. Japan gets around 75% from the Middle East. India gets around 60%. China gets around 50%. Europe is also heavily dependent. But here's the thing, oil is not rare. Venezuela has the world's largest oil reserves. Canada has massive reserves. United States has massive reserves. Trump just took over Venezuela in January. He's threatening to take over Canada. You see where this is going. If Trump closes the Strait of Hormuz by fighting Iran, the Middle East oil stops flowing, but North America is still pumping. Suddenly Europe, China, China, Japan, South Korea, they all would need American oil. And not just oil, fertilizer too. The nitrogen for food production also comes from the Middle East. If that's cut off, where do they turn? There are only two options, North America and Russia. Trump is making the entire world dependent on the resources he controls. Now here is the genius part. Who owns the most US debt? Who's financing America's $39 trillion? It's Japan, China, Taiwan, South Korea, UK, France, Belgium, and Luxembourg, the same countries that need Middle East oil. There's been this fear that these countries would stop buying US Treasury bonds, that they would move to gold or Swiss francs, that America's Ponzi scheme would collapse. But now they need American energy. They need American resources. They can't abandon the dollar. They are trapped. Trump just turned America's biggest weakness, its debt, into its greatest weapon. By starting an unwinnable war in Iran, he's forcing the entire world to depend on North America. This isn't new. Putin already proved that this strategy works in Ukraine. Russia has been fighting for 5 years. It's a slow grind, but it has restructured Russia's entire economy around war production, drones, ammunitions, and military manufacturing. Russia went from importing Iranian drones to making their own and now exporting them to Iran. Putin's plan was that the world is collapsing anyway, so why not build a fortress, make Russia self-sufficient, control the resources, and weather the storm? America saw this and said, we can do the same. Greenland for rare earth minerals, Canada for oil and resources, Venezuela for oil reserves, Mexico for manufacturing, Panama Canal for trade control. So maybe Trump is not being reckless. He is actually building a self-sufficient North American fortress while the rest of the world burns. So yes, Trump looks like an idiot. Yes, he's losing the war in Iran. Yes, he's destroying the global economy. But if the goal was to end the American empire and rebuild it for Americans, to make the world dependent on US resources while everyone else collapses, then Trump might go down as the greatest American president in history. Maybe the New World Order is dead, and maybe we are heading towards a Trump world order.
There you go. I just thought I'd just chuck that out to you to see what you and others in the chat think about that little strategy.
Well, it's a cunning plan, as Blackadder would say. And the problem with that is the complex system problem that Brett Weinstein would come back with. There's a lot of pieces to that plan. It all has to go right, and nothing has to crop up that you didn't plan for. And in complex systems, things always crop up that you didn't plan for. You can never control everything. And even if you could, people just won't go along with it. It's why communism always fails. You might have the greatest, 5-year plan, and we'll do this, the price of that'll be, and we'll build these. And the people, well, I'm not going along with it, which means you have to force them to go along with it, which means you get a violent dictatorship. And ultimately, you get 1 million people surrounding your government building, and you end up hanging somewhere. So, no, for a start, I don't believe, even if they have a cunning plan, I don't believe they can carry it off, because cunning plans never work. The world is too complex. Now, the other problem with this cunning plan is that oil is largely what you call fungible. So fungible means exchangeable. So let's say you did shut down the oil supplies from the Persian Gulf, and America says, that's fine, just take our oil. Okay, you've then got the exchange of oil between, does America sell the oil overseas to get money, or do the American consumers buy it at home? And even now, it is said that America is largely self-sufficient in oil at the moment. Nevertheless, their gas prices are up like 20 or 30% a gallon at home. They might be self-sufficient on oil, but you know what? You cut off the Persian Gulf, the rest of the world starts competing either for American oil or other oil that Americans might have been getting themselves, Venezuela, whatever. So the end result is, if you cut off the supply, the price goes up everywhere, including in places that think they're self-sufficient. And if you do that in a democracy, people aren't going to be very happy. And what's more likely is that Trump will get turfed out on his ear. Second-term president, he's gone anyway, but he's likely to lose the House and maybe the Senate in the midterms, which are this year, because people don't want to be paying $4 or $5 for their gas in Texas. Irrespective of his long-term plan, he's going to lose it by getting losing the midterms, and then the Democrats will take the House and change everything in 2 years after that.
Yeah.
Nice plan. You won't be able to pull it off.
Yeah, and again, that was just a theory from someone else, so that's all right. Now, where was your slides? What did I do? How did I pull that off? Oh, there's yours.
Good
That's
old
where we're
Don
at.
Zoo. All
Don
right.
Zoo. I like Don Zoo. I like the
And
Don
I've read
Zoo.
that book, and I wish I could turn and pull Sun Tzu and Clausewitz off the bookshelf there, but they're in the other room bookshelf. All right, we better get into the real show now that we're an hour in, and all we've done is rehash the events of the week so far.
That's all right. It's still important to get your take on what you've been observing in the global war and not global war, the international stuff. So yeah.
It's a global war, Mark.
Yeah, it is. That's right. We're financial war. That's exactly right. Yeah.
Wars are financial. All wars are bankers' wars. Yep.
Yep. Big money in arms, isn't there?
Fantastic profits. So, what have we got? Not easy being green. So it's now almost a year since the national black since Spain and Portugal lost their entire electricity grid and went completely dark for a few days. Rather like South Australia did 5, 6, 7 years ago when I lived in SA, and I remember it. So just under a year ago, we had this massive power blackout in Spain and Portugal.
And if you want to know how massive, they sort of almost weave into one. I just can't remember what episode it was. You'd have all the slides to tell us what episode it was, but I remember that was a way back, wasn't it?
Yeah. Now this shows you how big it was, because that's a shot from space. So you've got France, which is well lit up, and what's meant to be hanging off the left lower end of that is Spain and Portugal, and there's simply no lights. The entire country, 2 of them, were black.
Black as black.
Now, at the time, given Spain had been loudly trumpeting their embrace of green technology, wind and solar in particular, questions were immediately asked. Is that a musket?
That's a gin.
So questions were immediately asked at the time, okay, did this happen because the grid was destabilised by the green dream? And of course, the experts in the government immediately came out and said, no, it wasn't. And the cause at the time was a very sciencey thing, they said. So there was oscillations, there was synchronization, there was fluctuation. I bet there was hand waving going on. So it wasn't due to too much wind and solar. It was all these really sciencey things that caused it. And they specifically said that it wasn't due to excess renewables. A bit like the old vaccine story. We don't know what causes it, but we know what doesn't cause it.
It's climate change. Myocarditis is climate change, or other things.
Anyway, the experts in the government immediately came and said, no, wasn't that. Except it was, because a year later, when the report's been released, the report specifically says that the grid operators had been warning the government for months that the excessive wind and solar percentage of their electric grid was making it unstable. And they said, quote, at some point, we're going to crash. So the operators predicted it. They said that there were voltage fluctuations because of an excess of solar power and the lack of firm backup, so lack of nuclear and gas. So they lied at the time and said, oh, it's no, it's sciencey stuff with oscillations. No, they'd been told by the scientists, by the engineers prior, that it was unstable and what did happen was going to happen. Now, power grids are designed and run by engineers, and they are sciencey people, so they understand all of these things. And they know how much wind and solar you can use in a grid before it does become unstable, because the wind can turn off and the solar can turn off. And the number is 30 to 50%. If you're generating, on average, 30 to 50% of your nation's electricity from wind and solar, you're starting to run significant risks of this thing happening. Now, by way of comparison, Spain was at 56% at the time, so exceeded the threshold. Australia's only apparently at 30%, but South Australia's at 71% wind and solar.
Mm-hmm.
And do you remember what happened in South Australia a while back?
Yeah, we had a massive blackout, but yeah.
Same. And my my home state now, Victoria, is also well within the range. We're 42% wind and solar. So
That's okay, Bruce, because we just voted the government in that was guaranteeing net zero 27. So people actually don't care about whether the lights stay on or how much they pay, because we know here in South Australia, Bruce, that we're the highest paying energy, state in the country, and probably compare to the rest of the world as well. OECD.
Mark, they're talking about net zero electricity, not net zero CO2.
Yeah, that's right. Oh,
That's what they're promising.
Yeah, exactly right. Well, listen, Labor, old mate Mally's been getting accolades from, the WEF and all these sorts of people that, really talking up South Australia. We see where it's all going. But, the South Australians are still buying it, right? They've just voted them back in again, a big majority. So, pain's got to come before things get real bad.
Two things. They got a majority of the seats with a minority of the votes.
Yeah.
Gerrymandering, amongst other things, and also has to get worse before it gets better. There's my two answers to that phenomenon.
Yep. Oh, and going back to your comment about the engineers, Bruce, I just thought, like, through COVID, it's amazing how many people that push back on the COVID scam were actually engineers that were calling out lots of stuff. A lot of engineers pushing back on the climate agenda scam. It's just so good on the engineers, good on the critical thinking engineers, good on you guys. And anaesthetists, of course, anaesthetists, good on you, Mr. Oosterhouse. Good to see you out there too, and others, Bruce.
We were the people who were technical, who had a body of knowledge that they could fall back on, were the people who called out the scam.
That's it.
So
I don't know what my excuse was, mate. Maybe I just praise the Lord, Bruce, because I don't have a brain.
You are exactly that. There was a very high proportion of religious people who also refused to go along with this. So they had a body of knowledge that they fell back on, morality, probably more than science. And they said, no, this is wrong and I'm not doing it.
Yep. Amen.
All right. Software engineer, you might be able to sort out my issues with the latest Microsoft update, which making me now use my fourth operating system, or my fourth web browser in 4 weeks just to get this show to air.
Yeah, and that's why I'm having to present his videos. But anyway,
believe it or not, I'm on not Godzilla, Foxzilla, Mo Fox or something. Having Brave stopped talking to the camera. So did Chrome. So did Edge. And today I downloaded Mozilla, and that will talk, but it won't share screens. Okay. All right. Bit more of the old green dreams. So during the week, I heard a story from SA where there was a twofer where the electric bike, which was in a car, caught fire and destroyed both of them. And that seemed like a bit of a shame, really. And also this week in New South Wales, a whole warehouse full of e-bikes went up in flames for the same reason. They committed thermal hurry-carry. And this isn't just a funny thing. Major cities are having at least one battery fire a week, if not more, lately, and a significant proportion of them are small, cheap things like bicycles and hoverboards and so forth. And how many people have rushed out in the last few weeks and bought a cheap Chinese electric bike because they can't afford $3.20 for diesel? Quite a few.
Yep.
Battery fires in e-bikes are not to be taken lightly. And if you can play this clip for me, we'll explain why.
Yep.
An electric bike starts smoking inside an apartment. 2 people are inside. One gets out. The other one tries to fight the fire. Moments later, that person steps outside only to collapse and die. you found stashed. I'm Pat, firefighter, mechanical engineer, and battery guy.
Mechanical
This
engineer.
incident happened on April 3rd, 2026 in San Jose, California. An electric bike caught fire inside an apartment with 2 people inside. And like I mentioned before, one got outside, the other one stayed behind to fight the fire. That person did make it outside, but when they got outside, they collapsed and died. CPR was in progress when the fire department arrived. This was an Aramo e-bike. I tried to track down the exact model, but there's not a lot of information out there. And it doesn't even look like the company is active or around anymore. From what I can tell, this was a lower cost e-bike with a battery around 500 watt hours. But here's the thing, that's not unusual. That's a typical battery size for electric bikes. And it's normal to see these companies, they pop up, they sell their product for a bit, something goes wrong, then they rebrand as a new company. So again, this isn't some rare one-off situation. And unfortunately, this kind of battery is likely sitting in a lot of homes right now. And that's a big problem, but this isn't a death that had to happen. Unfortunately, the average person doesn't understand the dangers of thermal runaway because this isn't a normal fire. Real quick, thanks for watching. My goal is 100,000 subscribers in 2026. When a lithium-ion battery fails, they release a huge amount of toxic smoke. If you look at a single 18650 cell about this size, you can get around 6 liters of smoke. And in an e-bike like this, you're looking at roughly 100 cells. That's 600 liters of toxic smoke being dumped into a room, fast. It can happen in less than 30 seconds. This is how violent one of these failures can be. That's some exposure. But think about also what he was breathing in. Now, here's another example. Now, there's a lot of focus on what's in the smoke, and it varies depending on battery chemistry. You're going to see things like hydrogen, carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, different carbonates, and metals like cobalt, manganese, or nickel. But out of everything being released, there's one thing I want to focus on: carbon monoxide. The Fire Safety Research Institute ran a test where they failed e-bike batteries inside of a bedroom. I'll link the study in the description, but there's one result you need to see. They measured a 5% concentration of carbon monoxide during the failure. That's 50,000 parts per million. And as you can see on the chart, it plateaus. That's because they maxed out their meter. To put that in context, your carbon monoxide alarm goes off at right around 35 parts per million. About 12,800 parts per million, you're looking at collapse and death within minutes. The person fighting that fire was likely exposed to over 4 times the lethal concentration. It's really amazing they even made it outside. That's why I recommend evacuating immediately if an e-bike, e-scooter, hoverboard, or any other large battery goes into thermal runaway. And I know how this sounds because I see it in the comments all the time. So what, you just want my house to burn down? Yeah, I kind of do, because the alternative could be your life. As a firefighter, I'd rather come to your house and fight a room and contents fire or spend a couple hours putting out the whole house if I have to. What I don't want to do is put somebody in a body bag. Because like most fires, it's not the flames that get you. It's what you're breathing. And while any smoke is bad, battery fires are a completely different level. And that's why I don't recommend the general public use a lithium-ion fire extinguisher. Because when you're trying to extinguish a large battery-powered device that's in thermal runaway, you're not really solving the problem. You're just exposing yourself to a lethal atmosphere. If you're going to be near a device in thermal runaway, you need respiratory protection, the kind of protection that firefighters have. Thermal runaway in the real world, it's fast, it's violent, it's deadly, long before the fire even spreads. So if you take anything from this, don't try to fight it. Recognize it early, get out, and stay out.
Yeah, good advice
go.
there.
So, Dr. Bart Ehrman.
That's sobering, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very
60
much so.
seconds, you were getting a lethal CO2 level in those simulated bedroom fires.
That's massive, massive. Oh, you want that back? Oh, there you go. You got your. Oh, look
There
at
we
you.
go.
You got control.
And we've mentioned the car fire problem as well, and that hasn't gone away. It hasn't been turned into the cheap Chinese scooter problem. I mean, we're now awash in cheap Chinese cars as well. And sure enough, Hyundai's just recalled best part of 5,000 cars in Australia again because of a battery fire risk. And note that the fires could occur when the vehicle was left unattended. So when it was recharging or when it was
Which is
parked.
really disappointing, Bruce, because, you know, like we here in Australia, we were, you know, we were blessed for a long time having Holden, Ford, Toyota. Like we manufactured vehicles in Australia, right? But obviously a lot of that stopped. I actually, and Hyundai, I actually bought a Hyundai, look, 2011, I've still got it. It's a little 1.6 litre Hyundai Ascent, 315,000 kilometers, only did the regular service, still bloody goes hard. It's just disappointing that they go push towards this technology. They're recalling all this stuff. I'm not saying that cars don't get recalled and stuff, but like, you know, if you look at Hyundai, Kia, you know, these sort of models, these cars, they're pretty well built and they go pretty well for what they're priced. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'd love to see, you know, Holdens and Fords and other things being manufactured in Australia again. But yeah, it's disappointing that they go this way and only to have lots of issues with this technology.
Yeah, well, it wasn't ready. Our wise rulers have forced us. They've made a choice for us. This is the right thing for us. It's not the right thing for some people. And even if it is, they're totally downplaying the risks. Does that remind you of a certain pharmacological product?
Yeah, 100%. And this is exactly right. I mean, no one's discounting. I mean, I wouldn't expect even you, Bruce, to say, we don't want this technology. We don't want investment in, you know, well, let's look at ways of doing things better and that can benefit, you know, humanity and all that sort of stuff, right? But it doesn't need to be forced down our throats by an ideology. And that's the point we're making.
Yeah, it does, because people don't choose it otherwise.
Roger. Subsidies are great, aren't they?
Too stupid to know what's good for us, Mark.
Subsidies are great for the people that are getting the subsidies. It's like our electricity prices, right? They're giving $175 of taxpayer money to taxpayers, but it really goes to the people because the electricity prices haven't come down.
Yep.
Have they? They're actually going to the, you know, it's just the same old thing, isn't it? It's just, and you've covered this plenty of times, brother. So yeah.
We have. All right. Another story from the green segment. So even if you believe the whole, you know, CO2 is killing the planet thing, and you think that it would be a good idea to go the way that we're being said, how do we know that warming the planet is a bad thing? Because clearly in some places it's a good thing. You know, a bit of warming in Canada is probably okay.
And Tasmania, I'm pretty sure Gail, I haven't seen Gail comment for a little while, but maybe Gail in Tassie would appreciate a little bit warmer weather. I don't know.
So there is no such thing as an average temperature, and it depends on where you live. And this US study, in fact, showed that in terms of cardiovascular disease, there actually is an optimum environmental temperature, and that temperature's average 23 degrees Celsius. And they found that when the temperature was higher than that, they had a small increase in cardiovascular deaths, about 2,000 in this large study. But when the average temperature was colder than that, they had a vast increase in cardiovascular deaths, about 40,000. So there were pros and cons of changing the temperature, but by and large, in terms of heart attacks, the population did much better if the temperature got a bit warmer than the optimum rather than it got a bit colder. And, you know, pick any cause of death, it'll be the same. You know, icy weather, I'm sure would contribute to more car crashes, ice on the road, frost on the road. More people will die of hypothermia in their couch flat when it's cold than it's hot. You know, sure, the odd one will die of overheating, but studies consistently show there's at least 10 times as many excess deaths due to cold than there are due to heat. So this was reported by Joan Over during the week.
And why your people are constantly told that your climate systems in your house, cold or heating, should be set around 22 degrees as the optimal temperature.
Well, you know yourself, where do you feel comfortable?
Exactly right, 100%.
Most comfort, least stress, best health.
Yeah, 100%. There's some countries in the world that actually have that perfect climate too, Bruce. I think they sort of range between that 22 to 26 degrees all year round, apparently.
Tell you what, there's plenty of parts of Australia that the average would be close to that.
Yep.
All right, what have we got here? So this is a related conundrum for the climate change is bad people, because this story tells us that mass solar arrays change the climate. Because massive solar factories in the desert are causing increased cloud formation and increased rainfall, which is changing the environment. Now, that's a bit of a problem if you're one of the people who think that changing the climate is bad. How do we square this circle? The very measures that you're using to stop the climate changing are changing the climate.
Go figure. Who would have thought?
Go figure. Complex systems, perhaps.
Yeah. Big hot ball in the sky.
Righto. Health section.
Oh, Dan, you primed? You sitting down now, Dan?
I hope he's here, because here's a good story. There's good news for the horse paste enthusiasts. This study reported very promising results for ivermectin as an anti-cancer agent. In this case, it was combined with another antiparasitic, mebendazole, but I've also read a number of papers which show that ivermectin of itself in solo is effective in many cancers. So here's what this study showed. And if you want to look it up, the easiest way to find it is just Google what I've got there in yellow. So if you Google real world ivermectin cancer study wellness company, which is Peter McCullough's sort of business, you will find this study and you can read it for yourself. But here's a few details. They took 197 cancer patients, mainly with the common cancers, colon cancer, breast cancer, prostate cancer, lung cancer. And they gave them ivermectin plus mebendazole between 1 and 4 times a day. And then they followed them to see what happened over 6 months. So in those patients over 6 months, in a third of them, their cancers disappeared. In 16%, the cancer got smaller, so it regressed. In another third, the cancer stopped, so it didn't get bigger, didn't get smaller, and only in 15% did the cancer get worse. So those are stunning results in a small study, but they do mirror other studies. And like I say, I have read other studies where they're getting similar results, small studies early on, but there's huge potential here. This is a cheap drug, it's easily available, and it appears to be astonishingly effective. I wonder why it was that during COVID we weren't allowed to have it.
Well, many watching this show, apart from obviously our faithful doctor, probably agree with you, Bruce, and understand why it was demonized during COVID, Bruce. But anyway, I just wonder though, Bruce. Like this is the very simple thing with this, that whole horse paste thing from the FDA, that really, I mean, in my mind, right, and I'm not researched like you are, I wasn't obviously medically trained and all that sort of stuff, but just knowing what I know about ivermectin now, right, and how widely it's been used, for the FDA to come out and demonize it and ridicule people to class this thing as like, they were saying that a horse paste, it was really designed to ridicule people and give them a place in Wikipedia and other, for people not to even wake up, even mainstream people, even the 80%, even Dr. Dan. I mean, Dan, surely, you could look back and say the FDA putting out something like that has got to have killed their credibility. Surely. I just can't fathom it, right?
For a drug that's safer than Panadol, pennies on the dollar to buy a pill, and universally available worldwide. Why did they not just not promote it? Why did they actively fight it?
Yeah. No, well, this is the thing, right? And again, we know this, you and I, we've talked about it before. The media controls narrative and who owns the media, right? So the 80% of Australians or 80% of the world are still watching mainstream media, right? So, and this is the problem. One of our biggest enemies that we have to fight, and that's we continue to do this. We're censored, we're deplatformed. Is mainstream media is the tool that internationalists use to suppress a lot of this information, and so they share all that. And
Over
Dan just
time, it
reckons,
was saying,
and Dan reckons is because it just didn't work. But anyway, yeah. So Dr. Dan still
did
saying
it work for cancer or didn't work for COVID, Dan?
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
I've presented multiple studies that said it was effective. So let's not go down that rabbit hole again. We're going down the cancer rabbit hole here. And by the way, full disclosure, every 3 months, every season, I take a 6-day course of high dose ivermectin because I've got a strong family history of breast cancer and prostate cancer. So every change of season, which has just gone by, I take 6 days of high dose ivermectin on the grounds that, hey, why not? If that stops me getting prostate cancer, fantastic. I'd really like that.
Yep. So there you go,
And
Dan. I think I'm just going to show you. I'm going to share this because I just want to share the comment I just showed, Dan. Have a read of this one here from COVID Scamdemic. You want to talk about follow the money? Well, this is the follow the money thing, Dan. Right. So you want to say McCullough with ivermectin follow the money? Well, this is exactly your response. But anyway, enough of that.
Yeah, Dan, I can buy ivermectin for about $30 for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sachets online. I wouldn't say that's grifting, not when chemotherapy drugs cost, $50,000, $80,000, $100,000 for a course and have dreadful side effects, and they certainly don't have these efficacies. But like I said, let's not go down that. That's not the line I want to get diverted on here. Let's divert into this line as well. So during COVID, they not only suppressed simple things which help you boost your immune system, like vitamin D, they also suppressed simple, effective things like ivermectin. Now, it turns out if you took ivermectin, you got a twofer because this study has just shown that the COVID vaccines, the mRNA vaxxers, probably represent one of the largest, if not the largest, carcinogenic exposures of all time. So I get you to play this little clip from the epidemiologist Nicholas Holscher talking about that.
Absolutely, brother.
The COVID shots increase your risk of 7 major cancers: bladder, breast, colorectal, thyroid, gastric cancer. There was 8.7 million people in both of these studies, and they compared vaccinated to unvaccinated. So the vaccinated are getting more cancers. We have all the case reports published. People get these shots, and then a day later, sometimes a week later, they get massive tumors, or the cancer starts to spread everywhere in the body. CDC Wonder data, official government data, shows that excess cancer deaths have shot straight up right after the mass vaccination campaigns. There's been hundreds of thousands, or over 100,000 excess cancer deaths in the United States from the shots. It appears the mass mRNA injection programs were one of the largest carcinogenic exposures in history. The COVID shots increase your risk of...
Yep.
Now, Nick Holscher's a classic epidemiologist. He doesn't interview well, so I don't want to personally attack him there. But he has presented numerous studies in the past which show increases in common cancer rates associated. There are also mechanisms whereby that might happen. There were tumor promoters in some of the products, etc., etc., etc. But here's the thing. If it's true that this was one of the largest carcinogenic, cancer-causing events in world history, and we all know people who've suddenly developed cancer after their shots or whose stable cancer's got away. But if it's true that this was one of the biggest events, would it have been nice if you could have taken ivermectin? Would it be nice if you could take it now? And would it be nice if maybe you could, I don't know, could we treat it like like cigarettes. Remember the effort they put into demonising cigarettes? So if this truly is as bad as that, when are we going to start seeing the mRNA jabs having these sorts of warnings on them? If Ulcher's right, that these are serious cancer risks, when are we going to start seeing these pictures on the little mRNA vials?
Won't see it for a while, Bruce, because there's multi-millions of dollars of factories even in our own country being developed to run out this stuff, mate, and there's a lot of money involved in this.
And as we mentioned last week, maybe that wasn't great timing. Now, before we leave the old COVID story behind again, I have been asking myself, what the hell happened to the Donald? And I'm just wondering whether there might be a clue here. Here's a possible mechanism. So he seemed intelligent, articulate, he spoke well, he was quick. He looked like an outsider who would make real change. And now in his second term, he's just completely changed. He makes no sense. He appears demented. He changes his mind every day. He looks frail and old. And this story from 6 months ago might give us a clue. So Mr. T apparently had his booster 6 months ago. Now, we're talking about COVID-19 here, right? There's 2025 last year. But the reason why that might be a bit of a problem is this story, which has been published, and this was a large South Korean study, and it took 500,000 South Koreans. It split them into COVID vaxxed or not, and then it looked at the incidence of new diagnosis of dementia over the next 3 months. And it found a 22% higher rate in the vaxxed versus the unvaxxed. And many of us sort of anecdotally noticed during the COVID era that so many of the vax people, they just became morons. They couldn't think, they got slow, they didn't make any sense. I think it's plausible. And I saw a comment quite a while ago which talked about the lipid nanoparticles penetrating into the brain. And that, by the way, is the delivery mechanism that's used to get the mRNA shot into your body. It's a little fatty globule called a lipid nanoparticle. And they were originally developed to do exactly this, to transport drugs into the brain. Because prior to that, it was hard to get drugs into the brain, chemotherapy drugs, for example, because your brain is designed to keep stuff out. It's very important that you don't mess it up with chemicals. So lipid nanoparticles are known to cross the blood-brain barrier and get into the brain. So the fact that they do that, and they're inflammatory, Alzheimer's is an inflammatory brain disease. So is autism, by the way. So makes sense to me that, yeah, maybe the Donald has just had too many vaxxers. Maybe that's what we're seeing.
Yeah.
Righto. So that's the health segment.
It's a big, beautiful thing, Bruce. It's, Operation Warp Speed. It's the big, beautiful thing.
Bigly, very bigly. So here's the finance numbers. And as I said, as of, I normally put these numbers together yesterday, and things changed a fair bit today because of the sudden going over of the US Navy onto the Iranian side and keeping the strait closed. Nevertheless, here's the weekly changes. Gold is flat, hasn't really changed. Silver's gone up a little bit. Bitcoin's gone up a little bit. Stock market's up a little bit, believe it or not. And oil, that's an old number. So on Sunday, the Persian Gulf oil was $95, and that's gone up to about 103, 104 today. Although I haven't looked up exactly what is. That's the price at the Australian opening. I still regard that. What have we got? 102 for Brent. So I still regard the Mr. Market as grossly downplaying the seriousness of this. And I think $100 an oil is not anywhere near factoring in the real risk to worldwide oil supplies here. Now, each week I give you the Bitcoin price, and I've talked about Bitcoin many times. I regard it as private money, and the good things about it are that it is non-seizable. Nobody can take it out of your account. It's non-censorable. People can't reverse a transaction or say that you're not allowed to do it. If I want to send you Bitcoin, I can just do it. There's no middleman. And it's non-inflatable, or it inflates at a very low rate. So it can't be printed and lose value. And so I thought it was very interesting that Iran was actually accepting Bitcoin as payment for their Persian Gulf toll. So you might have heard that in the last week, they were letting ships transit the Strait of Hormuz, provided they paid a $1 to $2 million toll. And they were expecting that toll in either Chinese currency, the yuan, or Bitcoin. So not US dollars. They weren't taking US dollars. So, I've said all along that Bitcoin is the strongest and best form of money for the reasons I just talked about. And here's an example. The Iranians, who are very wary of people trying to shut them down or steal their stuff or freeze their funds, are taking Bitcoin. And I do as well. Still on finance, here's the comparison prices at the service station down the road. So last week on the left, today on the right. So unleaded petrol's down about nearly 10 cents, which is nice. Diesel's up a couple of cents, and so really not much change week on week. And isn't it sad? Like, I looking at that and seeing, okay, unleaded's $2.11. That almost seems reasonable. A couple of months ago, they'd be like, oh, gee, I'm not buying there. I'm be looking for the $1.65. And diesel, $1.80, $1.85. And now, gee, if I could only see a 2 in front of it, I'd be happy.
Yeah, amen.
Like I said, I think the supply threats are much greater than the market is allowing for. And Christopher Martenson had an interesting thought. He said, if you want to know what a litre of fuel is really worth, he said gallon because he's American. Okay, get your car, put a gallon of gas in it and see how far it drives. When it runs out, get out of it and push it all the way back. And then you tell me what the value of a gallon of gas is. And he's right.
Yeah, fair call. Absolutely, 100%.
Far more than we are paying. Far more than we are paying.
Yeah, you'd be willing to pay a lot more, I think, but not that we want to, but at the end of the day, if you want to keep going, so, you just do it.
And it's not just personal transport. It's all of the work that we get done, the things that we make. It's the earth movers that we run. It's the trucks that move stuff around. Yeah, it's far more valuable than we are paying.
Yeah, 100%. Yep.
Now, in that light, you'd be aware that Australia gets 80% of its refined petroleum products from overseas, and about half of it comes from Singapore. So we don't refine much here. So if we don't get overseas refined products, we are really in trouble in this country. And so Albo flew off in the prime ministerial jet during the week to Singapore, which, like I say, is about 50% of our imports, to make a deal or an arrangement with the Singaporeans to guarantee our supplies. And he came back saying that he'd done that. He'd got an agreement and Singapore's guaranteed supply for us. Now, I'm just going to ask, what is the value of that guarantee? Because Singapore does not produce oil. Singapore receives oil from elsewhere in the world and refines it and then on ships it. And in fact, up to now, much of Singapore's feedstock has come from the Persian Gulf. So what is that guarantee worth? Singapore says, no, we will keep delivering to you. Well, what if the deliveries aren't going to Singapore in the first place? This is not a guarantee that is enforceable. It's not valuable. And we are seeing strains already because the Singaporeans, like the Australians, are already starting to do public messaging saying that people should use less energy. So, don't have your air conditioner on as hot, etc. And we'll get that here. And like I've predicted previously, it's only a matter of time before we get the old, we'll drive at 90k instead of 110 to save fuel. It was done in the 70s, in the States at least. So Okay, it's nice that Albo's gone to Singapore to get this guarantee, but I don't know what it's worth, and I'm just hoping that it's not one of these guarantees.
Mhm.
And historians, do you know what that guarantee is? Do you recognise that?
Peace in our time. We're at war with Germany. It's for the got to make restrictions for the greater good, Bruce, for the greater call.
That's the UK Prime Minister Chamberlain, who went off to Munich in 1939 when Hitler was starting. Basically, the war was starting. He was starting to expand into countries around Germany. So Neville Chamberlain flew off and got an agreement, basically that would stop the coming war. He got an agreement with Hitler to stop it, and he came back, got off the plane, and waved this piece of paper and said, "Peace in our time." Now, of course, a year later, the whole world was at war with Germany.
It's very interesting. Wonder who had a
So-
part to play in that change between 38 and 39.
And I'm just questioning, what is the value of that agreement that Albo's apparently just reached with Singapore? We don't know. It's not enforceable.
Mm-hmm. Well,
And
yeah,
I'd
it's a
reiterate
good
what
question,
we said-
but it also makes me think about, what was going on at that time. And obviously agreements like that didn't suit the people that were trying to influence what was happening in the world at the time. But anyway, that's another story for another day, I guess.
Yep. And reiterate what I said last week, none of this is necessary due to geology. Australia is sitting on centuries of oil and millennia of coal. The only reason we don't produce and refine these here is because of government policy. So it's politics, not geology, that sees us in the position we're in at the moment.
Yep, you're screwed over by people that want to follow internationalists' ideology.
And might also be a good time just to revisit a topic that I think I did last year, and that was the abiotic theory of oil. So, in brief, not all scientists believe that oil and gas are biological products. Some, particularly the Russians, who, by the way, are the world's second largest oil producers, don't believe that, and they think that it's actually a natural, renewable process whereby chemical processes deep within the earth with massive temperatures and pressures actually produce hydrocarbons naturally, and that these then seep to the surface over time. So it's not a matter of trees and animals falling into the bottom of lakes and getting buried in sediments that causes it. The abiotic theory says, no, it's being produced chemically at the depths, and it's rising into those sedimentary layers and getting trapped underneath it. So just to review that, here's your conventional theory. So you got on the left, you've got a body of water, you've got living things dying and dropping to the bottom. They could be plants, they could be fish, animals, whatever. And then over time, that continual rain and mud, rain of animal parts and mud and slush leads to that biological matter being buried under these layers and layers of sediments, hence sedimentary rock. And then over millennia, you get temperature and pressure acting on them and turning those biological feedstocks into oil, so coal, gas, and oil. So that's the conventional theory. So here's the abiotic theory. The abiotic theory says that, no, these things aren't getting trapped under sediments that fall down on top of them. They're in fact being produced deeper and rising to the surface and getting trapped under the sediments, not because the sediments rain down on them, but because the sediment is a layer and coal, gas and oil push up and get trapped below it. So that's the abiotic theory. And it's something I'd never heard of until a year ago. Everyone, everyone just knows, they're fossil fuels, they're made out of animals and plants. Some evidence from this book, and the reason it's got the Nazi sticker on it is not so as I can get arrested by Dan for a hate symbol. But because
this will be censored now. They'll be sending AFP out to us, Bruce, because
obviously.
we've put this on there. Yeah, absolutely.
So during the
Very
Second World War, the Germans made a lot of their petroleum products synthetically. So they knew that you could make coal and oil and gas from chemicals and temperature and pressure. You didn't have to wait millennia for forests to turn into it. And a lot of their oil supplies, particularly later in the war, were synthetic that they made themselves. Anyway, here's evidence for abiotic oil. Whilst conventional oil is often found where you would expect it if it's a biological process, so it's in sedimentary rock, in that layered rock, it's found there because that's where we look, because that's where we think it will be.
Mm-hmm.
But if we look in other places, there are plenty of commercial fields where oil has been found much deeper and in unsuitable rock, such as bedrock. Doesn't explain it. You know, how did trees get compacted 15,000 feet down under granite? It's not sedimentary. How did that work? And that does happen. We also know that a number of dead plants and their satellite moons have methane in their atmospheres. Methane is another word for natural gas. So how did that get there? What fossils produced that? What plants rotted down to produce that? Where did it come from? It clearly couldn't come from a biological process. And another thing is that lab experiments have successfully made oil via these abiotic, temperature, pressure acting on inorganic chemicals. But no lab has ever made oil by taking biological debris and doing any of those things to it. Now, a couple more points. Oil fields, when they're found, there are all sorts of ways you can estimate how much oil you'll get out of them. And historically, very often, if not usually, you get a lot more oil out of them than you expect from measuring them at the start. The implication being either you get your measurements wrong every single time, or perhaps they refill from below. And in fact, that's also true. Oil fields which have been capped after they've stopped producing, and if they're left for a few decades, if you come back and uncap them, they'll have filled up again. They'll have oil in them again. So there you go. So what are the implications if true? If it's true that it's not a finite biological resource, but rather is a renewable chemical resource, then the whole peak oil thing might be a complete furphy. And that's one of the excuses that's used for the whole green dream, you know, the just stop oil people, is that you're going to have to stop at some point anyway because it's going to run out. So you might as well do it now. But if it ain't going to run out, if it's actually renewable, then that's not true. And that threatens the green scare. If oil is abundant and goes on forever, we don't have to bother with the greenies once we've proved that their climate warming science is BS, and there's over-its again. So, yes. So I thought it was an interesting journey into abiotic oil. And if abiotic oil is a thing, Australia's vast hydrocarbon resources might be even bigger if we started drilling in places that are unconventional, like the Russians do. You know, they're not the second largest oil producer in the world for nothing. It's not because they're looking in the wrong places all the time.
Well, Bruce, maybe that's one of the reasons we have international treaties that we can't go into the poles, because particularly the South Pole, is maybe they know of the vast oil reserves in that region. But anyway, that would be me putting my tinfoil cap on, wouldn't it, brother?
There may well be vast oil reserves underneath most countries or under the seas around them. And the reason they drill at sea is because you get a free hit. You might get a few thousand feet down just going through water. It's much easier.
Yeah, 100%. Yep. Mate, I just wanted to go, before you go on to this one, I wanted to just quickly cover a comment by Rock Monster Words of Mouth. It's got in there, Bitcoin becomes useless if the grid goes down, no internet, your Bitcoin wallet shut down. How many fiscal Bitcoins in circulation?
Okay, I'll just answer the first part because I don't quite understand the second bit. You are quite right. If the grid goes down, you can't access your Bitcoin. But if the grid goes down, one or two things is going to happen. either it's going to come back up, in which case you can access your Bitcoin, or it's not going to come back up, in which case the last thing you should care about is where your Bitcoin went. You need to care about where your firearms are and where your skinning knife is if the grid goes down forever, because 3/4 of the world's population is going to die in the next 12 months if the grid goes down everywhere.
And it doesn't come back up for you to be able to access it. Right, okay, so I get that. So what I think he's getting at with the last bit is that obviously notes and coins in circulation, silver and gold in possession, all these sorts of things, like all these sort of things that you're aware of, is accessible to people to be able to trade and do and whatever. But obviously he's saying this, Rock Monster saying that the Bitcoin won't be accessible.
Correct. I agree with that. It's a lifeboat to get you off the Titanic. It's not a lifeboat against an asteroid hitting the Earth. Nothing is. The financial asteroid. Yep.
Yep.
Righto, where were we?
Maybe there's a wall down there in Antarctica. Oh, be careful now. We could be talking flat Earth here. We're gonna could be moon landing stuff we're talking about. I'm not sure if we're ready for flat Earth yet.
Aliens.
Yeah, that's the next thing. Aliens. Holographics and 3D. Good stuff. That.
Righto. Do you want to give my screen? Oh, I can probably do it myself.
Oh, hang on. There we go. Oh, hang on. There we go.
Okay, diversity is strength section. Now, I mentioned this horrific crime in the contents list. So it's a strange story. So a VFL football player has been threatened with a 10-week suspension for using a, quote, homophobic slur during a game. 10 weeks, that's like, best part of half a season. That's an astonishingly severe penalty for a word crime, in my opinion.
It's pretty harsh, isn't
the tribunals agree, because if you do something physical that actually hurts another player, you might get 1 or 2. And in this case, the penalty for a dangerous high tackle, which broke the jaw of the other player, was a 1-week suspension. So
that's bloody ridiculous, mate. That's bloody absolutely ridiculous.
I don't know if it's ridiculous or not, because I don't know how severe a homophobic word crime is. It's clearly regarded as an extremely serious offence by the tribunal. And I thought, well, I better do a bit of research into that and see what that's all about. So a quick Google of the dictionaries tells us what a homophobic slur is. So first off, homophobic, it's a 2-part word. So let's zero in on the phobic bit. So here's a couple of definitions of what a phobia is. So from Harvard, a phobia is an anxiety disorder, and it's characterized by persistent, excessive, or unrealistic fears. And similarly, from the Wikipedias, it says that a phobia is also an anxiety disorder, defined as an irrational, unrealistic, persistent, and excessive fear, ... So both of those definitions have said that a phobia is an anxiety disorder. And then the first part of the word tells you what sort of disorder it is, homophobia, Islamophobia, whatever.
I'll give you one. I'll give you one. I've got a governmental and bureaucratic phobia.
Is there a word for it?
Gov-bu-phobia.
There's also, I'm sure look it up for me. There'd be one for, an abnormal fear of chickens or something. There'd be, trust me. Arachnophobia is fear of spiders. Anyway, the key here is that a phobia of any sort is a medical disorder. It's an anxiety disorder. Now, I immediately thought, well, hang on. The tribunal here is discriminating against somebody on the basis of a medical disorder. Isn't that bad? Are we allowed to do that? I'm pretty sure we've got disability discrimination laws that say it's illegal to discriminate on the basis of a medical disorder. And in fact, we do, because the Human Rights Commission says that that is a disability, and a disability might be physical, intellectual, psychiatric, sensory, or neurological. So a phobia is very much a disability, no doubt about it. The Human Rights Commission says that it is. Now, leaving that aside doesn't make any sense to me anyway, because isn't being gay something to be proud of? So if you label someone as gay, isn't that a compliment? So why would I get 10 weeks at the tribunal for complimenting somebody? It doesn't make any sense.
Well, if you put it like that, absolutely. Makes no sense.
And in fact, given that the tribunal has chosen to sanction this player, isn't it the tribunal that's being homophobic? Because there would be no point in sanctioning the player unless you believe that he created an insult.
True.
So the tribunal here is admitting that they believe being gay is something
to be ashamed
it's an
of.
insult, something to be ashamed of. So none of this is making sense to me. And it didn't make sense in the tribunal either, because they did a 3.5-hour hearing to look into this word crime, after which they could not come up with a result. And as I understand it, the player's defence was that he called the person a maggot, not a faggot. And I don't know, is calling somebody a maggot, is that an offence? And if it is it a 10-game offence? Interesting, in case you're wondering, a faggot is actually a unit of measurement. So historically,
I was going to say that. I mean, really, faggot. I mean, I was going to say, show me the evidence where that word is actually a derogatory word, like actually effectively. I mean, you've come out and do that. You've done that. Lucky I didn't interject. I would have got a gazump strike.
I couldn't find it. So apparently, a faggot is a recognised unit of measurement. So a faggot of sticks equals a bundle of wooden sticks that are 3 feet long and 2 feet in circumference. That's a faggot. There's also a short and a long faggot if the sticks are different rather than your 3 feet long. So this has been a standard unit of measurement since 1470 odd.
Well, there you go.
My research did not explain how it came to be regarded as an offence.
Yeah, I mean, calling someone a bundle of wood sticks, I mean, seriously, to get you 10 weeks off the field, I mean, crikey, Bruce, what the heck? What kind of world are we living in? Matrix or something? I don't know.
Interestingly, the term fascist is related to this, because fasces is a bundle of sticks as well.
Oh. Okay.
And I believe the use in the political sense, it was the people were stronger when they were all together, you know, as a group. So
well, that's a compliment then, isn't it? Because that would mean that the gay community is stronger as a bundle of sticks. So they'd be stronger as faggots, right?
Correct. Anyway, none of this makes sense to me. All I can say is that it appears that the tribunal is, one, being homophobic themselves by implying that there was something wrong with what he said, and two, discriminating against somebody with a phobia, which is a medical condition. And they've admitted it themselves because they've charged him with homophobia. So if they find him guilty, the tribunal's done what's called a self-detonating argument. So they've proven the case against themselves. Enough of that.
Well, look, at the end of the day, Bruce, you know, like, we've just gone crazy in this world. Absolutely. I just thought, you know, I used to be called a Nazi. You know, my parents used to wear combat boots to bed, you know, and terrible things, you know, like, it's really like how far we've come with words and everything else like that. And like that whole thing that you can actually give someone a week off the field for breaking someone's jaw, but 10 weeks for allegedly a slur like that. This is just goes to show how far we've come in this world. It's just ridiculous, and we ought to push back on it with every fibre in our bone. But anyway, Bruce, here you go. Here's your answer: electorophobia. Would you have even guessed that? Would you have? I mean, I look at that and I think, is that scared of electricity? Irrational
I
fear
pulled
of
it out
chicken.
of the air, but I don't doubt it was going to be there.
There you go. I answered it for you anyway.
A beautiful thing. We're doing at the moment. Are we doing the ridiculous section? No, the diversity section. That's
Diversity.
right.
Oh, the diversity. I know we're pumping out of the time. It's okay.
Oh, we're just padding it out, right?
Yeah, padding it's okay. We've still got people
Now,
watching, so that's okay.
unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
Now, remember,
haven't you people got a life?
Is Dan still here?
Oh, no, he probably jumped off after the medical section, mate. He won't hang around for the rest.
Well, check him on Twitter. He's probably, Twitter gropped you or something.
I haven't. No. He actually jumped on my personal faith, culture, politics rumble because I think he gets too much pushback on Michael Gray Griffiths' Clo rumble. So he's actually subscribed to mine now. But anyway, good on you, Dan. I really appreciate the feedback, Dan, that you give. We want to have an open mind and stuff. We don't want to cancel, and that's why I do show his comments as well. We obviously, I want to be fair as well. So
Yep. Why don't you send him a Bible?
I don't know. No, I reserve that. Well, I should, but whether or not it end up in the bin is another thing. I know that you would appreciate it. You're actually going to discern it, regardless of where it takes you. I know that you're going to, you actually appreciate it.
And you sent me a beautiful Bible. It looks like a very expensive book, so thank you.
No, well, you're well and truly worth it because you deserve more.
Righto. So next section in the diversity is strength section. This story caught my eye because it says that the first Indigenous woman has been appointed a Supreme Court judge in the ACT. And the reason it caught my eye was I know that face. This is the judge who judged me when I was on trial in Canberra for bullshit charges of assault with a motor vehicle, occasioning actual bodily harm. Now, I remember saying at the time I was pleasantly surprised at the fair run that I got.
Another quick plug, mate. Just here, if people want to know about that, you can actually go to Faith Culture Politics in Australia. So here's the website, right? Faith Culture Politics, and you can actually read about that right here. Dr. Bruce Paix, the cancelled military doctor who beat us. Anyway, sorry, enough of that. Cheeky little plug.
So when I was tried, that was my judge, and like I said, I thought I got a very fair run. I thought the judge was intelligent and thoughtful and considered my arguments, and certainly did seem to give me a fair run, which frankly at the time, going back 4 or 5 years, the way things were in the world and in Canberra, I didn't expect it. By no means was I expecting a fair run in the courts. And think of all the other cases that didn't get a run in the courts at all. Danny's unfair dismissal thing was thrown out. You had other people, no standing. You had the doctor who said, I was misled by the system. I vaxxed my own kids and I'm guilty about it. And they said, well, you got no standing to make a complaint. He gave the jab to his own kids, but no standing. No standing is a legal term. It means none of your business.
Yep.
Anyway,
well, I didn't have any standing, Bruce, because I cared for a child that was 0 days or 2 days old, and at the time he was 7, and they reckon I didn't have any standing as someone that cared for this child for that time to be concerned about what they inject into their body. So, this whole standing thing, rejected me as well.
Yeah, well, I didn't remember that you had the old no standing thing as well, and. Butterfly there's actually brought up a point that I'm going to bring up in a minute, which is that I know the scales of justice are meant to be blind and all that, which means you shouldn't judge people by their appearances. But I must say, I didn't look at my judge in the court and go, gee, I'm glad she's Indigenous like I am. Because you'd be aware that when I was booked into the jail, on their list of tick boxes, you know, have you got any medical conditions, diet, blah, blah, blah. Do you identify as Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander? And I said, yes. And the clerk went, yes. So I said, yes. So he said, well, which one? And I said, both. So he goes, both. And I said, yes, both. So he then went down to the next checkbox and went, do you need a visit from the Aboriginal Liaison Officer? So like I say, I identify as Aboriginal and Indigenous, and it turns out that my magistrate did as well. But I didn't know that. There's no way that I could have known that she was worthy of discrimination just by looking. And I think that was the point that was made by the previous commenter. So I couldn't actually find out the genealogy of this Justice Taylor because I was interested in myself. Is like what tribe is she from, and are they like atypical white Aboriginals perhaps? And I think maybe they are, because I did find this picture. So what you've got there is you've got the Judge Taylor, and she's there in the company of a couple of Ngunnawal elders. And they appear to be from a rather pale tribe as well, if you ask me. So perhaps the one on the far left might have a little bit more than the what is the requirement? It's just any, isn't it? It's not even 50%.
No,
So
1%. Should be like 0.1%, really.
anyway, I must say I was pleased. I do wonder now whether I only got a fair run in court because I was getting some sort of special treatment on the basis that I was Indigenous. And look, fair enough. You know, I was being oppressed by the system, so a bit of a levelling up. I'm all for that. And as we know, our entire legal and government system has got all manner of special privileges for pale-skinned Aboriginals these days, doesn't it?
So now I just got to call you Uncle Bruce every time we come to the show.
Yeah, Uncle Possum Skin. I get called by one of my acquaintances actually.
Does that mean I have to do a? Does that mean I have to do a welcome to Uncle Bruce's farm in Victoria there every time we come to the show?
Well, I have been regularly asked what it is that I'm smoking.
Oh, do share.
I think Dan's wondered the same thing.
Good gunja. There you go. Anyway.
Righto. So enough diversity. Myths busted. So here's an update on the old "Did we go to the moon" myth, which we covered last year, and we aired some of the skeptics' questions.
Oh, actually, I was talking to someone on one of that episode. You'll have to look up that episode for me, because I was talking to someone today that was looking to have a look at that that information about the questions about the moon landing, and you'll have to remind me of what episode it is so I can share it on.
And I think my position was, I think the skeptics have got a lot of reasonable points. I suspect they really did do the mission back in the 70s, but I wonder whether they faked the vision for television. Anyway, Artemis has apparently just left Earth, gone around the moon and come back carrying a crew of 4, which has addressed some of the original skeptics' questions, and I've listed a few of them there. So back in the late 60s, early 70s, the skeptics were saying the physics just don't work. You can't put enough energy in a rocket and take it off from Earth and achieve orbit and get all the way to the moon and land and take off again and get back. You would need to start from orbit, and you'd need dozens of flights to bring the fuel up to the rocket, because you can't blast that much fuel into space on a rocket. It's too heavy. So that was one of their suggestions. You know, the physics of doing all that and landing on the moon don't work, was one of the original queries. And that's not answered by the Artemis mission, because they didn't land on the moon. They just slung around it. And
Apparently
they don't necessarily need any fuel to do that. They just take off, get orbit around Earth, leave orbit, sling out to the moon, sling around that and come back. I don't think they need any fuel just to do a sling around the moon and come back. I think they just use the gravity. So this doesn't answer the they couldn't physically land problem. If they really went to the moon, it does address the what about the radiation belts, the Van Allen belts, because again, the skeptics said once you get a certain distance from Earth, you get bathed in so much cosmic radiation, which you can't shield with lead because you can't blast off. So the crew would all be dead and the film would be exposed and all that. So if they really went, they seem to have answered that question. But one of the big questions that I had came from the demeanor of the astronauts when they came back. The skeptics said, okay, we've got 3 fighter pilots, 3 men, 2 of whom had flown in combat, who've just pulled off the greatest engineering and exploration feat in world history. They've gone and landed on the moon and came back. You'd think they'd be boasting about it when they came back. But in fact, when they gave their press conference when they came back, they were subdued, they looked guilty, they looked like they were reading a script, they were non-spontaneous. And in fact, afterwards, quite a few of the so-called moon landing astronauts became recluses. They just hid away. They didn't do interviews, they wouldn't talk to anybody, and more than one of them became alcoholics and just withdrew into their shells. The implication being they knew it was all a sham and they were guilty about it and they didn't want to just keep going over it. So that's that. And compare here, this is the demeanor of those extrovert fighter pilots who've just pulled off the first moon landing in history. See what they look like at the press conference.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Manned Spacecraft Center. This is the Apollo 11 press conference. The format today will consist of a 45-minute presentation by the Apollo 11 crew, followed by question and answers. At this time, I'd like to introduce the Apollo 11 crew, astronauts Neil Armstrong, Michael Collins, Edwin Aldrin. Neil?
It was our pleasure to have participated in one great adventure. It's an adventure that took place not just in the month of July, but rather one that took place in the last decade. We all here and the people listening in today had the opportunity to share that adventure over its developing and unfolding in the past months and years. It's our privilege today to share with you some of the details of that final month of July that was certainly the highlight for the 3 of us of that decade. We're going to divert
probably enough of that, Mark.
From the
So does that strike you as somebody who's jumping out of his skin having just achieved something truly historic? Or does it sound like somebody who's trying to remember his lines and doesn't believe in what he's saying?
And 100%. I mean, it's one of the biggest feats in human history to be able to land, fly out of our soul, out of the Earth's atmosphere onto the moon and land on it, then come back, take off from there, do all that in reverse, come back, and to be melancholy like that. Seriously?
Yeah, he's over the moon, isn't he?
Yeah, literally. Yeah.
All right. Now compare that to the Artemis astronauts press conference.
Yeah. Let's have a look at this.
Whenever we get a little distracted, so we did a lot of syncing when we were on this mission for no reason whatsoever. I have absolutely no idea what to say. This is 24 hours ago. The Earth was that big out the window, and we were doing Mach 39, and here we are back at Ellington at home. every one of us are just going to give a couple words, but I get the mic first, so I'm going to start. Victor, Christina, and Jeremy, we are bonded forever, and no one down here is ever going to know what the four of us just went through. And it was the most special thing that will ever happen in my life.
Yep.
And our families are over here, and with the exception of Dot, Susie, and Jeannie, who are in the audience, but I don't know where they are. But Dot, I'm going to hit Mac and Donald's later today, in honor of your husband. No one knows what the families went through, man. This was not easy. Being 200,000 plus miles away from home, like before you launch, it feels like it's the greatest dream on earth. And when you're out there, you just want to get back to your families and your friends. It's a special thing to be a human, and it's a special thing to be on planet Earth. Thank you.
Ian, that's enough of that one.
Yeah, I just want to play. Because I watched this. I just want to play this little section. Sorry, mate, I'm going to be gratuitous here because I did watch this when you shared it. I want to listen to this.
Wait, now I got to make a joke. The only person who can follow that up is Victor Glover, so let's go.
And now we're ready for questions. I'm going to keep it brief because I'm afraid to start talking. I have not processed what we just did, and I'm afraid to start even trying. When this started on April 3rd, I wanted to thank God in public, and I want to thank God again, because even bigger than my challenge trying to describe what we went through, the gratitude of seeing what we saw, doing what we did, and being with who I was with, it's too big to just be in one body. And I wanted to thank our family.
Just the only reason I wanted to play that, brother, is here's a guy that's just used all of the technology of humans can possibly get to send something out there and do that. People can argue about whether they actually did it or didn't do it. So he's done all this glorious stuff that humans can do, and he's thank God for what he was able to do and see. And I kind of, when you sent that to me, because we primed this up, and I don't generally see the clips that you're going to show, it really, when I was watching that, it kind of made me reflect a lot. But I also want to say about what the previous speaker was saying, and I picked up on those, no one will ever know what we saw. Correct. Who knows what's the truth and what isn't? He said, no one will ever know. Right? And then he also said, it was a special thing to be a human to do all that. But he was appreciative, and he said he was appreciative of getting back to Earth and be appreciative to be a human on Earth. There's a few fundamental things that really kicked me spiritually when I was watching that, Bruce. And I don't know, and people can watch that themselves. But when you sent that to me, I'm probably reading into it differently than other people. Personally, I don't think these people saw what they wanted to see. And I think that these people are acknowledging that there is far greater than the human spirit and the human ingenuity, and they acknowledge our Creator God as being powerful. So I don't care. I don't know what they saw. I don't know what they did. I don't know what's true. I don't know whether they did or didn't do what they said they do. But that is something to reflect on for anybody. Don't care. You don't have to be a Christian. You don't have to agree with what I say. That fundamentally kicked me in a very spiritual way. But anyway, I'll leave that with you. That's why I wanted to play that last little 20 seconds when you asked me to turn that off.
Yeah, and I watched that. I believe they went there because that's the sort of emotion I would expect. And anybody who's gone outside on a dark night when you're not in the light pollution of a city, a complete blackness out the Australian outback, and you look up at the massive stars. And I do that, and I just think there is no way I can even begin to understand what I'm looking at. So flying around the moon only scratches the surface on the immensity of all that.
Mm-hmm. Amen.
Right. So, where are we?
Oh, you want me to go back? Sorry. Hang on, I'll bring you back on again. I
Yeah,
think
you
I've got
do it. I
mine.
won't touch it.
That one?
And you
There
stopped
we
it. That was that one. All right, final silly section. 7:30. It's another long one, Mark.
Oh, no, we really kicked it, haven't we? Anyway, we've still got people here. They're commenting, so you know we're not. This isn't AI. This isn't AI, Bruce. We've got people genuinely commenting, and they're sticking in with us for 2.5 hours. So, God bless you. Thank you for still being here with us. Appreciate it.
All right, to take us out, this story. So apparently, one for the ridiculous file. So the tenants of this address apparently received a note from the debt collectors telling them that they were 2 cents overdue on their water bill and that legal consequences were about to follow. 2 cents.
2 cent
Now,
water bill.
it's not even possible to pay a 2 cent bill.
True.
Because you can't send a 2 cent piece anymore. And many bill payment things won't allow you to put 0.02 cents in. So the occupants apparently said, and this wasn't just an automated bill. This wasn't just something that the computer spat out because it was positive. Someone had taken the trouble to highlight the amounts and put a stamp on it saying overdue, final notice. Isn't that beautiful?
What the? Wow, that is just that's ridiculous. It's the
It's
segment
ridiculous.
of ridiculosity, brother. Ridiculosity.
So they apparently took the time to contact the debt payment agency, and they were told that it was a genuine letter and that they need to immediately pay or there could be problems. Isn't that beautiful?
Just a moron bloody admin. I mean, imagine that 2 cents would just for the person to send an email would have cost 2
It's
cents.
a physical letter. It's a physical letter that somebody's put in an envelope and put a stamp on it. See that final notice stamp?
Yeah, would have cost at least bloody. What does it cost of stamps these days? Bloody hell.
Now, because I enjoy these little challenges, I would have just refused to pay it, let it escalate and see what happened.
Yeah.
Because
Do your worst.
you know, if it was like the council, in 2 weeks' time, you'd get a final notice overdue that says they've added $20 to it. You now owe them $20.02. That's what would probably happen. So,
yeah.
I'm pretty sure you could take that to court, plead guilty, and then say that no fine, no penalty should be imposed on the grounds that it should never have been prosecuted in the first place. Which, by the way, is how I got out of the allegation that I didn't vote in the council elections last time. Because again, I would front up to the judge and say, I really apologise for wasting your time. It's not my fault that I'm here. Blame those buggers who are chasing me down for 2 cents.
Yeah, that's right. And could you please dismiss it?
And we covered this strategy a while back. You can, often if you get in dispute with an authority, they usually won't budge. First thing, you'll write and say, look, I'm sorry, I couldn't move my car from that car park because I was dead at the time. And they'll write back and say, sorry, that's not an excuse. And, a few back and forth. But a different strategy you can say is, I'm guilty, but you should never have prosecuted this because it's ridiculous. And if you choose to prosecute it, I'm going to go to the court. This is what I did with my alleged didn't vote. I'm going to go to the court. I'm going to apologise to the magistrate for wasting their time. I'm going to say that I'm only here because of the intransigence of you in prosecuting me. I've explained to you why I shouldn't be penalised, and you've not accepted that, which is why we're all here. So I'm going to plead guilty to the offence. I'm going to ask that no conviction be recorded because it was a stupid prosecution and wasted the court's time. And if the judge agrees, I'm going to request costs because I'm only here because you forced me to be here. Now, last time I did that, after about 4 letters back and forth, the council withdrew the offence. So it's always never take no from a council, at least in the first 2 or 3 times. They'll always say, just pay it, just pay it, just pay it. But after
Yep.
you've got past those spars, then you get the real answer, which may well be, oh, well, okay, we'll withdraw the offence.
Yep. Always fight it. Always fight it.
So I think, yes, it was. There it is.
Look at you go. There it is. And 2.5 hours later, and we come to the end of the show. That was good. Good for the interactions. Bit of giggle time. Bit of tinfoil hat.
Wonder what operating system I'll be at next week, or what not operating system, what web browser I'll be down to.
Yeah, that's really interesting to see what's going on there. I don't know. You might have to clear your cache, maybe, Bruce. Or do all that sort of stuff. So maybe someone can reach out to talk about that sort of IT stuff. And because I know that sometimes when you delete your browsing history, if your browsing history could be affecting it and stuff. I'm no IT bloody guru, but I just know that I've tried some things in the past where you delete your browsing history and all that sort of stuff. Where but it could be related to the update. Who knows? But thank you again. Yeah. Well, doesn't sound like you'd be the type to be scared, Bruce. But anyway, I couldn't imagine that.
My neighbour says it's some glitch with a auto Windows update, which they push at you whether you want them or not. And everything else works except no browser will connect to the camera when I want to use StreamYard. And this is the fourth or fifth one or so. Brave started playing up, then we did Chrome, then that played up, then we did Edge, then that played up, and now I'm on Mozilla, Godzilla, whatever it is. And if that doesn't work, we might be on DuckDuckGo next week.
DuckDuckGo. Well, I mean, DuckDuckGo was bought by bloody some Bill Gates interest, and a lot of these other things were taken over. But anyway, no, I don't trust any of them. I mean, look, I can't talk. I use Chrome. It's owned by Google. That's the only one that really gives us, really streamlined kind of platform for StreamYard without any glitches for me so far anyway. But, it's not ideal. But anyway, there you go.
And you're using that at the moment, is that correct?
Yeah. Use Chrome. It's the only one that's really kind of just hasn't given me any glitches or issues. So that's okay.
Just thinking I might delete it and then re-download it, see if that makes any difference.
Well, you could do, but try your browser first. Try deleting all your history. You do have to go back and do your passwords and all that when you do delete history sometimes. So, but again, as I said, I'm no sort of expert on this, so someone might be able to guide you in a better direction. But anyway, brother, just before we go, I did want to give it one more plug. Is that jumping onto the Faith Culture Politics site. Faith Culture Politics, fcpaustralia.com, and there you will find the little article I wrote up about Dr. Bruce Paix, the cancelled military doctor, and I did put some links in there. And I know Bruce hates it, but I don't care. I want you to read his story for those that haven't read the full bit, and give myself a little bit of a cheeky plug as well. So click on that, and you'll be able to bring up that article there and read that in its entirety. From there, and there you go, Bruce. I did have to get rid. I got rid of some of your number and your email, but
I saw that.
That is what you gave me at the Freedom Rally in Adelaide when we met, and I said I want to talk to you, Cobber, and that's a copy of the business, the contact card you gave me. So, but anyway, I still am absolutely blessed to have got to know your brother. I love that. What you continue to bring to the audience. Happy to continue to give them a platform until such time that you decide to actually go for a bigger platform and take yourself to a much bigger limit. But anyway, for now, I'm absolutely grateful that you continue to utilize me. Good on you, brother.
I've had all sorts of people come up to me and saying, I'm Tucker Carlson or whatever. Have you got a card? And I go to Nugi. So.
Love your work, mate. Love your work. All right. God bless. God bless you all. I hope you have an amazing night, everybody, and we'll see you again next week. Take care.
Catch you then.
To fight again for that already burned, he was driven towards the flames. All the signs are there for all to see, the signs we've lost our way. When we jail our heroes and applaud our villains and turn our hearts away, like a silent choir too scared to sing the anthem of a braver day, a song our children may never hear, the ballad of Dr. Bruce Paix. A song our children may never hear, the ballad of Dr. Bruce Paix.